reached AT&T. Let's go. Okay. No. Oh, do we have audio? Do we have audio on the Zoom? That's the bigger question.
Is that on?
It is, but it is not muted. All right. We're just getting things going on here. Can the audience here hear the Zoom? Let's see. Can you guys hear me in the Zoom? You can. All right. What are we doing? No, we don't need that just yet. Kassav, are you the one going to be the one that's sharing your screen? Okay, we're not getting your audio here in the main room. Hold on a second. Let's see what's going on. I am sending audio out on all the outputs. You need to turn that up in the board. Check. Can you say something, Kassav? Give us a little sound check for the audience here.
Hey, hello.
All right, you are now live and everybody's watching you. Okay.
Can
So,
you add me also on this call?
sure. I've asked him to move to. He's. Let's try one more time. I'll invite him to move to the main session. So the way this actually, so for folks, just a little bit of an orientation this morning. I think we can actually start this now. I think we got everybody here. Oh yeah, let's do that. Almost there. Is this one up? Okay, we got that one. So just a little bit of an introduction for the folks on the Zoom. One of the things that I'm still a little disappointed about with this remote hybrid stuff. One, I know it was great to wander around and be able to present from my car and listen to the conference all day, but the remote people are being very shy. So, you know, for all those folks listening out there, one of the ideas of this hybrid conference, which obviously I think we haven't really succeeded at, is to let remote folks turn on the camera and somebody wins. Thank you. The first remote person that turned on their video. I'm going to send you a bottle of scotch, okay? All right. Thank you, sir. Because we've been trying to do this all day. The idea is we've set up screens all over the conference. We've set up these meeting owls, which I don't think people understand how they work. They actually pick up audio around you and will automatically pick a camera and will send video of anybody talking around you and has a speaker. So you are actually coming from the computer and your video pops up on a screen over here. So we haven't had anyone other than folks inside the conference use it for internal communications at this point. So, we always want to see all your very pretty mugs. So, all right, look at this. This is magic. Now I'm kind of happy. So now we've got, we just have to let you guys see these guys. So let me worry about my screen here.
And all the meeting owls are in the lobby room. So if you join the lobby, you'll be able to see the
They will
owls.
eventually get distributed. Let's make sure that we are joined in the right place. We are in the conference ballroom. And why are we not seeing everybody's screen here? I'm going to have to leave this one and just restart Zoom on this thing. Okay. Yeah, I just want to restart that. We've got audio here. Well, I'm going to do one more thing here before we let folks start. So the thing we've been elusively chasing for 2 years now is we've tried Gather, AirMeet, we've tried using Zoom, we've tried using Discord video conferencing, we've tried all of these things, but none of the virtual stuff has managed to do what we did last night at the party and what we'll do at the room at these breaks is just get people to chat and interact with each other. Because watching the presentations is great in my opinion, but eventually if you go to a virtual conference, it turns into a security Netflix. You might as well be watching a pre-recorded talk. There is no interaction and there's none of this back and forth, which is, I think, where the magic happens. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make sure you guys can see. You know what, let's do this. You guys were supposed to be seeing the audience on this screen. So let's make that happen. So that the audience, and the instructors have an advantage on this particular remote one because they've got Zoom Live already, but I go over here and fumble. So Kassav, Hi, nice to meet you. Do you do you want to give us a quick like 30-second introduction with yourself and your co-speaker, and then we'll have these guys give you a hand once they actually can in a second here.
Sure, I would love to, but my co-speaker is not in this
Is
Zoom.
not in the Zoom. So the way this works is you guys get to pick your own rooms that you go to at the conference. They're breakout rooms, and you can wander around the conference itself. So we've invited him to the breakout room. Do you have a back channel to get him to tell him to please go, or message him, somebody? Okay, so there we go. Life is happy over there. And what we will do over here.
You just send him a message in chat.
Oh, we actually are streaming all this to the internet. Ooh. All right. So, logistics, as always, we are hobbits here, so there's been a first snack, and we'll get second breakfast shortly. There's a lot of funny stories to why we keep that tradition, but mostly because we're so busy running around doing setup stuff, we never ever get breakfast. So that's why we always want to have a second breakfast. But it's proven to be a very popular feature. Turns out that most nerds like me are maybe a little bit ADHD or slow to start in the morning. And so do we have a speaker yet? Let's see. All right, let's let you see the room. Turn the video on here. So, and now, Kasav, if you see that CanSecWest12.net there, oh, I see. That will give you some indication of once I do this and get it to do its thing. You'll be able to see the audience and folks there. This is the one corner of the room over here. And we'll have a microphone over here. So unfortunately, the one drawback of this, since we're sending the conference audio over here from actually it'll work. I take it back. It'll work fine for you because people will be able to ask you questions here. We'll be running around with a microphone and let the physical people ask virtual presenters. Do you want to share your screen? Make sure that we've got both of you up here on both projectors for a quick second.
Sure.
That's all good. Looks like it's all happy. So we'll just wait for that can go away. It always complains about that. All right. Oh, that's snappy. Let's do also change our view so that this, since we're doing remote, let's get you so that the audience can see you as well too, sir. Here we go. Did that work? There we go. Do we have a second speaker yet? We do. I think. Do we have all conditions set for launch? Please go. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, drivers. Hi all. A very good morning, and sorry for the technical glitch, and sorry for keeping you waiting for a bit. But
Do you just unshare your screen for a second, because so they can all see you.
okay.
Thanks.
Let me know once we are good to go.
We're still. You know what? I forgot I have godly Zoom powers, and I can do this myself. Stop screen share. There we go. Boom. You're live.
Shall I share my screen again?
If you want the slides, but if you're gonna talk for a little bit, introduce, I would say wait a second so they can
Okay,
actually see your
great.
your lovely mug, sir.
Okay. Hello, guys. A very good morning and good evening for the folks who joining. Good evening or good afternoon.
For the application lifecycle and how do we integrate security into the application lifecycle. We're going to end the session with a tech model view and recording in progress.
She looks muted even though she's trying to talk.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know. We are getting the audio through his audio is what's actually not happening here. So we'll try to message him to explain that to him. But there we go.
That build versus buy kind of decision, and why not learn the solution is also that's what we think, and then he goes for the buy decision. There are multiple solutions that you would know for anything there are solutions. In this case, there's Adele, Maroon, Dragon, and the customer sees a couple of things, right? Because designed to increase the shipment time, the ROI, where the ROI is good, and also how secure the solution is. So I think that's a pretty recent step that is everything from security related stuff and other things that would help increase the market. He decides on a third-party solution or nothing. 2 months in this company when Maru was integrated into the development life cycle, and oops, its critical customer data was compromised, and Big gets hit after the most recent attack. All these are like the headlines that are flashing everywhere. Maroon paints Big red. Big stock prices are all-time down. You can actually picture your own organization in place of Big, and you can picture a certain third-party software that you've been using. And just take a moment to think about your dependency on the third-party solutions that are integrated day in, day out within your organization. Either directly you're using them or you're using them indirectly, right? But there are a lot of third-party solutions. Now what happens? Retrospection, right? Retrospection for the product owner, while all the other security teams and the other teams are trying to manage the loss that they've just faced. So the product owner is thinking, they claim to be the most secure in the market. What happened? So he thinks that they said that RBAC controls were in place, but nobody tested it, nobody checked it, nobody ever went ahead to do a review. They said that secure CERT-based integration technique is available with conditional supply. What were the conditions? That it was available only in the beta mode. They said that extensive auditing and logging of user actions is available. What about admin actions? And they said that data in transit is encrypted. What about data at rest? Also, since it's third party, we know that contracts play a very important role and is one of the things that can really scale well. But what are contracts? These are the legally binding documents that will help companies come out or bear some of the financial damages and some other conditions that would have been after effect of a certain attack. Well, does not really help, right? And of course, there was no test environment for the security features to be tested, but then the product owners thought that everything else seems to be fine. And so, folks, after retrospection, he knew that something was missing. What was missing? It was a good detailed review. So here are some of the examples, the real software attacks that many of you have heard about. SolarWinds. Did somebody not talk about SolarWinds? Enough, more than enough. Like lot of discussions on SolarWinds, lot of talks on what happened in SolarWinds. Actually, an unpatched vulnerabilities in the file transfer reply. That and the impact still is not fully known. The people are still uncovering the impact. Talk about the third-party applications and also think about, since we are talking about the entire software supply chain, there can be also risks that can be brought in by vendors. Vendor leaving unsecure data on the internet. Vendor uploading sensitive patient data on public GitHub. That sounds really scary, right? Many of us do work with vendors. I also work with many vendors. Do we have a lot of checks in place to ensure that something like this does not happen? Well, I have seen many vendors, when they move around the team, they would download a lot of sensitive information that ideally they should not. Just take a second, just take a pause for a second and think if your organization has a way to identify when these things happen. If not, red flag, something that you must do. Well, these are some of the examples. Here are some of the numbers. These numbers were shared by Blackkite. According to this, 23% of all the software third-party incidents are attributed to software publisher. That is the highest percentage. Oh, somebody is saying that they're not seeing the slides. Another slide?
We're seeing them over here, but we're actually getting your audio through your co-speaker's video feed. Yeah,
Okay.
everybody can see the
All right,
slides.
so I'll continue.
But you might want to
So yes,
unmute.
these are just, some
Can you hear me?
interesting numbers. So in 2021, 1.5
maybe
billion
not.
users PII were leaked. Think how big this number is. 1.5 billion users. How many people are sitting in this room? How many people are there in Canada? 1.5 billion users PII data was leaked. Isn't it like too much? Third-party
Okay,
data.
let's
So when it comes
this
to taking
way.
the responsibility, whose responsibility is it? Who should take the responsibility? Do you have an answer to it? If you have a thought or an answer that whose responsibility is it to secure your third-party software in the organization? Keep it to yourself, and we'll come back towards the end of the session and talk about whose responsibility is it. With that, we'll talk about some of the challenges.
Sure. It was quite scary. So still now you would have heard about various software attacks and what could have happened if something goes wrong, and with live examples, right? So some of you might think, why don't we have a strong contract in place? We have insurance and everything in place. Why can't we just use that? But let me tell you, practically, like the supplier will not be ready to contractually take ownership of all the data breaches that can fall on the application, because that's an unknown space. And like everywhere, we have to follow the defense in-depth approach. So if we are to secure our software supply chain, what can we do? Can we directly go scan every third party out there? No. Can we get full details about the application? No. There are quite a few challenges when we are dealing with third-party softwares, like as we have I've shown in the slide. Number one, the application and its internal code. These are considered the IP of the supplier, and not many suppliers will be willing to share it. In fact, we have had a hard time getting the document about the third-party vendors report also, like even the findings or wherever it is, because that is a sensitive information, and it is like an internal IP of that particular supplier. And the next one, again, in today's multi-tenancy cloud world, where the same application is being shared by multiple clients, it is impossible for us to get an environment to scan the application periodically and get results. And this is another issue we face today. There is no one particular standard that talks about third-party software security. We have standards that talk about third-party suppliers, like the ISO 27034 and 36, but they target mostly on the third-party supplier itself, not necessarily focused on the software side of it. As a result, we often have a hard time in dealing with suppliers, because organizations do not have a standard for third-party software, and then also for the supplier standpoint, they have to comply with different standards for different organizations. That has become really tough. And moving to the last one and most important one, in the larger organizations where we have budgets that are handled by individual teams, and each team has the autonomy to choose which software they want to use, how do they want to use, how do they pay, and everything, it becomes increasingly complex to understand the software footprint of an application. So in the event of breach, we don't even know how many instances of such software are there in your organization. So with that, let's move to that next one, the phases of the third-party software lifecycle. As we understood from the previous example, software breaches can happen at any time in its lifetime. With that in mind, we have created a high-level flow similar to what we have in secure development lifecycle. Like for your first-party applications, you have a lifecycle process. You have design, implement, deploy, and test and maintenance. Similarly, we wanted to do something that is aligned with third-party softwares. So these are broadly the four major categories. The reason we have segregated these is that they have modular in nature, which means that each of them can be independent. And then we can also integrate security tasks into each of them. So these are modular phases, and security tasks can be integrated into each of them. So let us talk about the evaluation phase. The evaluation. This phase. Okay. At this phase, at the evaluation phase.
Is that us?
That's mute all the participants.
Okay.
Okay.
I hope I don't have to repeat the same sentence again, but
No,
At this
don't.
evaluation
That'll be the speakers too.
I know, but that's the only way we're
Okay.
going to stop.
the business group is looking for software which can solve
Need
their
a
business.
hold on a second. What is this? So we got
Mute all of the tasks.
Okay, hold on a second.
Yeah.
No, you know what? We can do this as actual folks. We'll just mute folks individually. Keep going, please. That was hilarious.
Sure. So let's start with evaluation phase again. At this phase, the business group is looking for softwares which can solve their business case. It can be RFP phase, where they're trying out multiple softwares and eventually decide on one. And once they decide on one, they procure it, they go through contract negotiations with the supplier and everything. And once the software is procured, we get into the deployment phase, which include how the software is configured in the system and what controls are enabled, how the software will be used, and etc. The next phase in the life cycle is software update phase. As we all know, software over time goes through a lot of feature enhancements and bug fixes. It can be new functionality getting added into the application, or it can be new attacks that are going on with the application. So they have to make a hot fix. So that those things come under the update phase. And eventually, once the software comes into the retirement phase, where the business case of using the software is done, or the software has to be abruptly removed due to various factors such as contract breach or cyber attack and etc. So this is at a very high level how an end-to-end phase of a third-party software looks like. Now, in the next slide, let's look at how we can integrate security into each of these slides. So let's start with the evaluation phase. As we agree, prevention is better than cure. Having a security review and assessing the risk of a software before it is installed is always better than identifying the risk after the breach has happened. Hence, security evaluation is critical at the beginning itself. So we have to make sure that we evaluate the software before it actually enters into the system. So the security activities here may include point-in-time assessments, where we assess that particular application at that point in time with the specific security standards, and risk treatment, which we'll be talking about in the next section. So moving on to the deployment phase. So the configuration of an application plays a key role in improving or degrading the security of a software. For example, in the story of the product owner, we have talked about the RBAC controls. The solution had the capability to provide
recording in progress
to do the RBAC controls, but were they enabled? So that is where the deployment reviews or configuration reviews are very important. So this phase also gives us an opportunity to validate whether the bugs identified in the previous phase, that is the evaluation phase, are properly mitigated, or do they have compensating controls and etc. So next in the list is update phase, where oftentimes applications go through an update cycle, especially due to the hot fixes or feature enhancements and etc. But not every time the software gets updated at your local instance. This can be due to various reasons. One is there is a dependency on that particular version, and your application is dependent on only that particular version. And if you upgrade it, your application might not work. That can be a legitimate business case. But there can be other cases also where the user did not really update the software. In these cases, we have to make sure that if there is a legitimate business case, we formalize an exception process and make sure that that particular risk is properly tracked. And software eventually goes into retirement. And in such cases, it is important for us to make sure that we have the technical controls to block the software and stop the software from being used into the application. So for this particular thing, the inventory is the crucial important point. And also the crucial point here is to share the feedback across these phases. So generally security teams in each of these phases are independent of each other. They work in their own scope and everything. But sharing that feedback across the teams is important. For example, if a software got retired or evicted due to a cyber breach, the team in the evaluation phase should also know it, so that going forward, if they get such software for their queue, they make sure that they don't allow it into the system in the first place. Similarly, the findings that we have discovered in the evaluation phase will be validated in the deployment phase, because that is when the solution is actually procured. So this feedback is very important for each of these phases. So now let's do a double click on each of these phases and to understand what are the different activities, how we can integrate them into our system, and etc. So let us start off with the evaluation phase. So for this one, for the success of this phase, the enforcement is the key. It starts off with creating a unified channel for all the software procurements across the enterprise, even in big organizations like the likes of Microsoft's and Google's and everything, where teams have the autonomy, where teams form into organizations, business groups, and then eventually drill down to the enterprise. So in these cases, the teams would have the autonomy and budget, and in terms of the budgets, in terms of the spend, in terms of how they want to use the software, and etc. Even in these cases, we need to create a unified channel for all the software purchases, software procurements, and align them with the central PO process as a separate category. This can be your software and cloud services category or something like that. The idea is you have a centralized system, and every software, irrespective of the business group that is using it, should still go through the same governance process. In terms of paying them and everything, that's up to them. I mean, even if they had the autonomy, it's still for them. But the governance is the key here. Every software that is being purchased or being used should go through a governance process. So enforcement is the key. Other enforcements include updating the policies, like updating a third-party policy for your organization, making sure that there are no gaps in the system. For example, we end up seeing cases where employees use their credit card or something to make a purchase for a subscription or etc. Because that's an easy thing, that's a quick thing and all. But going through a governance process can be a little tricky and all. So we have to make sure that such gaps are filled, and then we also have the proper mitigations or workflows in place to remove such things from happening. And the second important phase, once the procurement process is made, what the security team has to do. Once we have the procurement thing, we have made all the enforcements done. Now, what is my role as a security team there? So it starts off with prioritizing the software assessments, the high risk versus low risk applications, figuring out which of my applications, which on the list of third-party applications are crucial for me. Obviously, we cannot do review or assess each and out there, because there can be several hundreds, if not thousands of those applications. So we need to make sure which one of these applications are high risk versus low risk. So we'll be talking about this prioritization criteria in a detailed section in the next slide. But for now, think of it as no two software should be treated the same way. It should be assessed based on the risk they carry. Now, the assessment activities in this phase might include supplier attestation, where we send them a list of questionnaire which talks about application security best practices and which of them are supplier aligned to and how are they managing it. And then the next part is about the technical assessment, where we either do an hands-on security assessment on the solution, or in cases where the supplier is reluctant in sharing us the document or the environment, we ask them for a third-party pen test report. So that gives us some level of assurance that security is being taken care of and all the medium to critical vulnerabilities are being mitigated. And then in the alignment with industry best certifications is also key, like the likes of ISOs and SOC 2s, which show the maturity of an organization. So for example, if you have two suppliers, one of them is ISO or SOC 2 certified, and the other one might not have as many controls. So going with a matured organization is always better, because we know for a fact that these controls are there and they're also being actively validated. So with that in mind, let's look at a proposed workflow on how this whole journey of an employee, security team, and the supplier might look like in the proposed workflow. So it starts off with an initiation phase, where like we have talked about the enforcement, where every user has to submit a request if they want to use a third-party software. So it starts with an initiation where the employee submits a procurement request, software request. This essentially has details about the software, like who is the supplier, what is it being used for, how many users are going to use it, and etc. So that data is being collected and being shared to the security team. Now the security team, based on their knowledge on the risk parameters of the organization, decides whether they want to do an in-depth comprehensive assessment or directly approve it, considering it as low risk. Obviously, we will not be able to do a scale to all the assessments we have, all the applications we have, but then that is why prioritization is the key here. So if the if the security team decided to do a kick-off an assessment, they will reach out to the supplier's point of contact, asking them for attestation of the questionnaire, and then asking them for artifacts in terms of industry certification, third-party pen test report, hands-on assessment environment, and etc. Once they have all of this, that gets into the risk evaluation phase, where the analysts in the security team go through the assessments, go through the supplier's responses, their artifacts, and cross-verify with whether whatever they have said is being validated. So once we have that, we eventually end the assessment with a bunch of findings. Now, these findings, we reach out to the supplier and ask them to understand whether these findings are actually findings, or it is due to some miscommunication, or they have other compensating controls in place, or etc. Once you eventually have that recommendation phase, we talk about final list of findings, which are acceptable vulnerabilities from both the supplier and the business group. Then it goes into remediation.
Yeah, I crashed around 3, slept until about 7 a.m.
Okay. So from now on, so this is the critical step here, where we are trying to balance out productivity versus security. Now, definitely as a security team, we might want to fix all the findings before we approve the solution, but it is practically not feasible, because we often end up with findings which can take up to 1 to 3 months, and if not even 6 months in some cases, to get them remediated. In those cases, we cannot really ask the business group to wait till the finding is fixed. That can impact their business in a big way. These can be a business critical solution, and they might want to use it. In these cases, what we do is we create something called as a remediation plan. We bring in the confidence of both the supplier's point of contact, our internal business team, and the security team to come up with an acceptable timeline for the third party finding remediation. So once we have that, once we agreed upon that this is what it is and this is the best we can perform and this is acceptable, the security team will approve the solution, and eventually the software gets procured. So, and this finding along with the remediation plan sits into the risk treatment platform of the organization. It can be anything. It can be your bug tracking tool like Jira's, or even Archers, or anything as such. It gets into the risk treatment platform. And then once the security team has approved, the business group has procured the software, and things are going smooth. And once the remediation plan is due, that is when the business group from the internal team reaches out to the supplier and saying that, hey, you have a promise to remediate the finding in so and so timeline, and this is the timeline we have. So what is the status of this particular finding? So if the supplier has provided evidences that the finding is fixed and everything, great. The security team will validate the evidences and close the findings. If the supplier is not remediating it or is not compliant going forward, the security team will make sure that going forward, any third-party software requests coming from the same supplier are being blocked, which essentially means that the supplier will not be able to do business with that particular organization. So this is how we can both balance out in terms of productivity and security, and also make sure that we get it at an acceptable risk level. So in the next one, we'll be talking about the prioritization criteria. Till now, we have spoken about we have to prioritize low risk versus high risk and etc. So why do we have to do that? There are a couple of reasons to it. One, no two softwares remain the same. For example, an application that has access to your highly confidential data is considered far more risky than an application which has access to maybe public data, like a market research data or your sales lead data or anything as such. So criticality is important. Or an application which is used by 10,000 users is far more crucial compared to an application which is used by a handful of users. It also depends on whether what kind of privileges the application has in your ecosystem. For example, a network monitoring tool will be a lot more crucial compared to probably an IoT device in one of your IoT lighting-based device. So that prioritization parameters are important for your organization. So we need to identify them. These are some of the lists that we have come across that we use day in, day out, but this is not the comprehensive list. These are some of them. So on which we take our decision on whether we want to do an assessment or not. So application category in terms of whether it's a SaaS application, client application, or COTS application, etc. Data labels talks about the different data classifications like the highly confidential, or public data, and etc. And regulatory compliance data or user count and spend, etc. These are just a list of software parameters that are important for us. But depending on the organization you work in, or depending on the industry that you work in, these parameters can be completely different. For example, a healthcare organization might give more emphasis on the PHI data compared to maybe something like a data label, or even the spend. Or a financial company, a finances organization can give more emphasis on financial and regulatory data compared to something else. So the idea here is we come up with list of parameters that are very specific to my organization, and we make sure that this is repeatable. So it is not like we don't put in a human and every time the human will take a decision on whether it is important or not. We
Recording
try to
in
automate
progress.
it as much as we can, so we follow consistency across the risk. So again, our categorization of P0s and P1s and P2s are such that the top 5% critical applications go as P0 applications, where the highest level of assessment is done. Whether it includes mandating them for an industry certifications, whether it includes doing a hands-on assessment by ourselves or some things like that. These are some of the assessment activities. Again, P1 applications are the ones where we do a deeper assessment, not as comprehensive as P0s, but then we have other optional things also. Like we might take a third-party pen test report instead of asking them for an environment, or we can ask them for a policy document instead of mandating them to an industry certification and etc. And P2 applications are typically the lower risk ones, where we automate them end to end. The complete assessment is done automated way, and we just close it. And depending on the organization and depending on your risk posture, you can in fact add another categories also to it. But this is what the overall Uber level prioritization criteria can look like. So with that, we have talked about evaluation. Now let me hand it off to Neha to cover the next phase.
Does it sound better? I hope it does. What was it that came out of the evaluation phase? Right, you evaluated, or the security team helped the business make an informed decision with the evaluation. But with evaluation, we are now deciding on a certain software application.
Recording in progress.
Vulnerabilities that were identified. So it's great. Now let's see what happens next. Just keep in mind that only evaluation is not enough. You might have the most secure of the applications, but the way it is configured in your environment might open many doors for attacks. So, after the security review, it becomes extremely important to go for a configuration or a deployment review. Look at threat models, get your threat models reviewed, look for open ports, see if enabling encryption, encryption enabled for data at rest. Also, see if there are the right level of permissions that are granted if your application is contributing with SSO. Very important. Next thing, which oftentimes folks ignore, is understanding the operational guidance of a software. Softwares would come with operational guidance on how to use the software, how to deploy the software. That should not be ignored. It is a step-by-step instruction that is compiled by organizations to help workers carry out complex routine operations, right? So it cannot be ignored. It is as important as the code that you have. It consists of all the information that is required for operating the software. Coming to the next phase, in the previous phase, remember there were issues and the vulnerabilities that security team had identified for you. Going ahead, knowing that there are critical vulnerabilities may really not be the right choice. So if there are vulnerabilities that are identified in the evaluation phase, see if these vulnerabilities are fixed by a third-party software supplier. If not, then what are the compensating controls that the supplier has? What if that is also not there? If that's also not there, then you should do something else. Delay it or have your own, right judgment, let you take decision on how you would like to go ahead or how much do you want to trust this application. Also, wherever possible, onboard to the continuous configuration management tool. See if the application is deployed in the cloud, what are the control checkers, cloud control checkers that you can use that probably will not tell the security of the application. But again, since we are talking about the deployment, so what are the right controls that are in place? Look at the default controls that come. If by default a certain thing is open for all to access, then you should make it specific if that is the business requirement, right? So based on the business requirement, look at whatever are the controls, or have some understanding around what are the most important controls that your organization should be checking or that your business should be checking. The last and very important thing is creating an inventory of third-party software in your system. So by inventory, what do I mean by inventory? What do you think when I say that create an inventory of third-party software? You might think of all these different teams that are working with your organization. So if it comes by the procurement channel, if it is a procure software, then probably the procurement team has it. If it is a vulnerability scanning team, then probably they have a list of everything. Or similarly, there are other teams, they might have their own inventories. But really, is that giving you a full, complete end-to-end view? Maybe not. When time requires, probably you will look for data that can be consumed in the best way possible. So when I talk about inventory, it is the inventory of these third-party applications that also tell us when was it procured, what are the right teams, what are the roles that are having access, where all these applications are deployed. Right, so that is inventory that you should be having. Moving on to the next phase, which is the update phase. So remember this slide on the application lifecycle that Keshav was talking about, and he mentioned that the update is phase where there are feature enhancements, bug fixes, right? Now, just take a moment and think about all these breaches, third-party breaches that have happened due to certain updates. Don't you think it's important? Of course, it is very important. Ensure that there are periodic reassessments that happen. This may not be the most scalable approach, just thinking at an update level after every update. So it might not make sense, but you should think about ways that are more scalable, like every time when a renewal is supposed to happen, then probably you should go for a reassessment. Also, depending on the criticality, like let's say only one third-party supplier is maintaining more than 80% of your platform. Have you heard of keeping all your eggs in the same basket? It's the same thing, right? So those are the points where you should think about having more rigorous or probably time-based assessment. Ensure that all applications are up to date. Use the monitoring tools that are available to ensure that all the applications are patched. Very important. Ensure that all applications are patched. Now integrate threat intelligence into the application inventory, right? So so many teams, there are so many different teams that are working on excellent, wonderful things, and not just different teams in one organization. It's the case across the industry. There are so many different groups that are working on so many amazing things, but how well are those? How well is that intelligence coming to us for the consumption, right? So it's important we will be able to use this intelligence in a very good way if it is integrated in a way that it can be consumed. Why will that be useful? That will be useful in cases of alerts that are required during 0 days or any sort of hot fix. After update, the last phase is retiring. So evaluation was done, decided the software, deployment also happens for that software, and of course there are updates that the software has to go through, and then there is retirement, right? So at the retirement, when do you consider a certain software to be ready to retire? When the business need of the software is done, so the software is no longer needed. Again, think that every time you stop using the software, would you diligently go uninstall, clear up everything? Maybe not, right? And that is what happens many times. So look at all the inventory that you have. If a certain application is set to retire, no longer needed for the business, support is not available, or there are vulnerabilities, critical vulnerabilities that are not being fixed from a long time, that is the right indication. Then you should retire the software and look at the inventory that was built to understand the entire application footprint, right? This will also help in DPDR cases. Ensure that there are software blocks in case of data breach. Update the web application firewalls. Ensure all the software of these to be retired application are uninstalled. People cannot access the third-party software. All the data is deleted. All the ports are closed. Right? Ensure that cleanup does happen in case of retirement. So that was a view of all the different stages.
Right. So till now we have talked about various security tasks that we need to perform in each of these cases. Now let us have a look at how these can apply to your real world threats that come across. So to give you an example, so this is a simple use case where a user has decided to use a third-party software and deployed it over time and used the software and went into multiple updates and everything. And eventually, once the business is done, he has decided to delete the software, like uninstall it. So now we have added threats at each and every phase, the ones that are highlighted in red. And in the next slide, we'll be talking about how each of these threats can impact the application, and then how this particular framework that we're talking about can help you avoid such risks. So let's go through these threats one at a time. Where first one, where the user selects an insecure or a known vulnerable software. So obviously, user may or may not be aware about all the security implications of a software. For him, his point of view is only that whether this particular software is helping him increase his productivity or solving his business case. So he will be using a software. He might not look into whether it is secure enough or what are the controls and etc. So that is where our enforcement at the evaluation phase begins, where we have a unified process that says that user has to submit a software for a request, and then it has to go through the security team review before it gets approved. Now, the security team, whose job is to make sure that all they have the inventory of vulnerable software, they go through this request and make sure that if it's a known vulnerable software, they deny it at the very beginning itself. This will help us in a big way, because if we are actually stopping the software from entering into the system rather than doing an BCDR kind of exercise once the software is already there. So this is how we can avoid for the first threat. And the next one, where the user selects the software where the security is unknown. For example, not every, we might not have the inventory of every third-party software available over there. There can be several thousands of them. In these cases, when the user selects a software on which we do not have an inventory, that is when we kick off an assessment, looking at the prioritization criteria that we have talked about in a couple of slides back. Then we look at prioritization criteria and then decide if we want to do an in-depth assessment, and then assess the risk of the application and finally approve or deny based on the application's risk. Now, next, the user has, the security team has approved the solution. This software is secure enough and everything. Now the user has purchased the software and eventually trying to deploy it. Now what happens? In these cases, this is where the deployment review comes into picture, where we track about the findings that we have discovered during the evaluation phase are fixed. And two, we also make sure that we have proper configuration controls in place so that the software is being deployed securely. And as we move towards the life cycle, right, when we talk about using the software over time, then the user, due to his whatever reason, might change certain configurations. He might want to export some of the data directly to a vendor or something. So he immediately disables some particular configuration controls. In these cases, we might not be able to manually go through, look at it. That is where onboarding them into the configuration management tools, especially on the cloud, will be really helpful. In these cases, they will be showing alerts based on the organization's baseline policy, and that will be able to track such kind of things happening, and the user will be aware of this will be flagged. So such kind of non-compliant activities will not be done going forward. And then eventually the user does not really update the software with the latest version because there was again a version dependency or something in these cases. So in these cases, we either push the software update to happen or if there is a business legitimate business case in this place, we formalize an exception process. In either way, we are keeping track of the risk, and also we are trying to ensure that if an exception process is there, that will be signed off by the leadership, which means that there has to be a legitimate business reason for that, and the risk is being tracked. In those cases, the risk with these things will be reduced, because we will also employ compensating controls to them. And now, if the application was a compromised by an attacker, in case there was a data breach that has happened. So the first thing is, because we have an inventory that we have collected so far, one is we know at an instance that what are all my different instances where this particular software is being used. Now we can look at technical controls based on what are the different things, like whether it's a host-based block or a network-based block, or what things can we do to isolate this particular software to contain its impact. And eventually this application gets retired from the ecosystem. This is where the business case is done. In this case, we again make sure that we properly retire the particular software from the system. And this is how this framework that we have talked about so far can help you mitigate most of these threats that we come across in a typical third-party software lifecycle. Now let me hand it off to Neha to talk a little on about open source libraries.
So open source is again very wide area. So think about, when we're talking open source, think about the open source framework, the open source platforms that are being used. In the interest of time, we will just quickly touch upon the use of open source libraries and what is it that you can do at scale for your organization. Leverage tools like white source, right? Use this market intelligence that white source or similar places bring. Look into the dependency checker tool, look into Dependabot, integrate those into your build pipelines. And just, what we have seen from our experience is that if you want to ensure that you are successful in making your organization secure, then the strategy you take has to scale, right? So whenever you are putting everything, ensure, yes, that too. So whenever you are looking at, putting security in a way that it is successful, think of ways how you can bring it closer to the system. In this case, if you have to bring it closer to the engineers, take it closer to the engineering system. Put it in the build pipelines and see how engineers can be alerted. So that would be a recommendation for using open source libraries. In interest of time, we will quickly come on the takeaways, and I'll go back to our very good product owner example and the question that I left you with: whose responsibility is to secure third party at your application, at your organization? Did you all think about something? Did you by default say that it's the security team? Yes, of course, we are responsible in many cases, but security is a shared responsibility. So do not shy away, play your part. It's a shared responsibility.
Yeah. So the second one is again in continuation with our first point, which is a shared responsibility. We also make sure that this security is again between the security teams also, it is being shared across. So which means that we are not talking about security as an afterthought, which is a point in time assessment or a one-time effort, etc. We have to integrate security to each phase of the life cycle to make sure we reduce the risk as much as possible.
Invest in building seamless communication. Oftentimes, there is a lot of information available in different silos that needs to come across and communicated in a way where it is consumable whenever it's needed.
Yep. So because this third-party software risk is very new to the system, we often end up trying to spin up a whole system altogether, both for integrating the risk treatment and everything. Do not do that. This has been a practical learning for us. Use the existing engineering systems, because that is where developers are most comfortable with, or the users are most comfortable with. If you spin up a new system into their ecosystem and then expect them to drive remediations and all, it can be really tough. The journey is the journey can get messed up. So make sure, if you want to get traction, if you want to get a successful very soon, then use the existing engineering systems, and then use security also as much as you can into the engineering systems itself. Don't try to create a new thing.
Build one common secure inventory for all the third parties.
Now, you have, once you understand that a particular software is not as per your security standards, it is not compliant, the supplier is not ready to mitigate the risk and everything, make sure you have that blocks in place to prevent such prohibited software from entering the system. It can be at multiple layers. It can be at a host level, at a defender endpoint level, or at a network level where you put blocks on the firewalls or anything as such. But you have to invest in the technical controls to ensure that the software that is prohibited does not enter your ecosystem, because that is a known risk. That is like a ticking time bomb out there.
So with that, we have come towards the end of the presentation, and we will be happy to take up the questions. There are some questions already. So configuration management tool, we have our own, as in for Microsoft, we have our first party tools, and I think there are some other tools that are provided by AWS for your cloud deployed products, and Google as well. So depending on your cloud, I think the cloud providers do have some of their tools that are integrated. I think Google has something called Anthos.
Yes, and the important point here is we need to come up with a baseline when we are talking about configuration tools, because for example, the one we are talking about for Microsoft, it can give you 150 different test cases that it can scan for, but they might not be applicable for all of your applications. So you need to come up with a baseline on what does that configuration look to be, and what is my minimum set of controls that we need to look at.
There is one question on the life cycle phases slide. Why no phase for operation? So this is our thought, and if there are like other questions, or if you need to know anything else, we will be, you can just get in touch with us. The way we started thinking about was, for the life cycle, was that when we are thinking about this life cycle of application, it is about how the application enters, what are the updates that would happen, and when the application would go out. Operations, I do not necessarily, I mean, I am probably not able to understand that. What would you mean, particularly in terms of application, if you're saying operation? So if you can, just.
Yeah. So one thing that I can think of when we're talking about operations is in terms of software usage. I mean, that if that is what you are referring to, in terms of software usage, that is where we are talking about the deployment phase, where we are talking not just about how the application is configured, it also about over the course of time, how is it being changed in terms of whether the configuration has changed or whether new functionalities got added. These are all part of the standard operations when you are using the application. So from a security standpoint, we have segregated it between deployment and update phase, not necessarily operations, because operations is more towards the functionality side of a user. That has been our thought process on that.
Okay. If there are no more questions, then probably time for the second breakfast that people are waiting for. So we will put our personal email IDs on the chat. If there are any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you.
So right now, just shipped everything by 30 minutes. So that means we will be.
So thanks everyone for being a great audience. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Dragos, for giving all the time, even though we started off a little late.
No worries. We've got a very complicated setup here. It's a a lot of moving pieces. So the other interesting part of all this too is that one of our lead team AV, he also maintains code systems for a large telco over here. And he got pulled away yesterday because a piece of code written in PLM in 1984 broke.
See, there's
And
another
someone
legacy software out there.
Exactly, right? So he's been like, and this is the billing system that creates revenue for a major corporation. So everybody's going, ah. So he's like, okay, Keith, I'm sorry. I know we probably can't keep you here for the video. You're gonna have to go fix that problem. So
Oh, you should have told me that. We could have used this example in the update phase.
I should have actually, and that's actually what I think was the interesting part of your presentation, is that everybody is really facing all these problems. I think that we've got lots of techniques and things that we've got to get a lot better at. It's early days. We're still experimental on a lot of stuff.
Correct.
Yeah. So so I'm sorry we don't have breakfast for you guys on the Zoom. I mean, it's
No.
But I think next year for the hybrid part, we're gonna have to like work out remote food delivery or something, time. But that's just exactly what we need, is another moving piece to this hybrid conference, right?
Okay.
Dragos, make sure
Okay,
you
well,
eat.
actually, I sneaked in and grabbed some eggs Benedict on my way to the control room when I actually was shuffling around the stream audios. So just so that you guys can understand. Here, I'll give you guys a little bit of a tour. What we're actually doing here is so we've got a bunch of camera feeds going to a control room streamed out over NDI.
Right.
And then so the stream is actually going from another room. And we actually have two switching points where we can overlay. So somebody's sitting at this desk and control camera, somebody's sitting at that desk. And then we've got the Zooms feeding into both points. The audio setup is a little bit of a nightmare because we've got a soundboard over here feeding into speakers and into wireless mics, which are feeding into a Zoom, but then you got to feed the Zoom back. And at the same time, in this room, you also have a meeting owl, which you guys has you guys on the screen. So there are plentiful of opportunities for all of this stuff to feed back, right? One lesson that we've learned in all this conference stuff is that the remote audio stuff is, we're using a voice meter potato, lots of buses, lots of buttons. You click one of them and you all of a sudden get, and everybody gets deafened. So
I can imagine the complexity.
Audio is always the problem on all this stuff. That's what we've learned over 3 years of virtual conferencing. Like we were like at the beginning of this presentation, we were actually getting your co-speak, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. Your audio was coming through Kesav's feed, so it was like his camera was up on the window because Zoom just takes where the audio is from, and we had to. There's a lot of moving pieces in the background stuff. So, and so again, to all the folks that are, there's about 40 people online or whatever it is right now. To all the folks wandering around, feel free, jump on, turn on your camera, interact with folks. We've set up these base stations. I don't think we have the one in the phone-to-own room, and I'm going to walk over there and maybe fix it right now. We'd love to have all the folks who couldn't travel here interact with the folks in the room. So that's my stretch goal for the conference. So. Anyway, nice to chat with you and our audience.
Our pleasure.
No.
Cool. Oh yeah, there is. So, and I'm serious about that bottle of scotch for whoever DCG is. I'm gonna track me down. Send me. We had a winner from last night. It'll be a nice scotch. Bowmore 18-year-old. So
Nice.
If he doesn't want it, send it to me.
I think next year at CanSec we have to bring a few bottles of scotch and share them with people. This sounds awesome.
Yeah, actually, the party. So I hate to say that we've not figured out a way to make the party virtual, but the party was a nice vibe last night. We shut it down around 3. Ate a lot of pizza.
Nice.
And, so I don't know if you guys. I don't have it here. I have to go find one here. Bear with me, since we're on a break time and you guys have really no food. I'm gonna go find. So one of the things that we did. Let me.
Now you are making us jealous, Dragos.
Oh yes, well I'd like you all to be here in person. So that's part of the thing here. I'm gonna go show you guys. We had I don't know if you guys remember, but there's one of our conference volunteers, Carrie Keyworth. She and her husband actually set up a craft beer, Farm Country Brewing, last year. And so they're just in the outskirts of Vancouver. So one of the things we did for this year is for Pone to Own, we got them to set up some special beer. I've got one of the last few remaining ones over here, and I'm doing. Say hi to the folks on the internet. Jay Beal's on here, and a couple other folks.
Hello.
All right.
Hey.
And you know, we'll take you guys for the scenic tour through the hotel. Say hi to the folks on the Zoom.
Hey, Dragos, you want me to just send you something on dr@secwest.net or something?
Yeah, so that's perfect. Just send me your postal address.
Sure.
I'm so jealous. I love this hotel.
Yeah.
It's a sunny day in Vancouver. We don't, you know, that's one thing about Mays is weather's a lot nicer.
Right.
So
You gotta
say hi to the folks on the Zoom. All right. You know, let's take you guys whole tour. Oh, hey, Rob's watching. A virtual attendee in the hall. Hi, Rob. Yeah, we're gonna get feedback. Exactly.
Hey, Rob.
Well, no, I've got mic on, so maybe your speaker. But let's go through here. We're trying to find our control room, messy control room. So let's go over here. Oh, it's going to feed back. Watch out. Oh, it's going to feed back. Watch out. And I see how much lag there's.
nice.
Messy. So, oh, here it is. Here's the magic right here. Also,
think
for those of you that just walked in, let's see, is my tracking camera working? I've got this fancy new Obsbot camera that's supposed to be tracking me, but it's not. Anyway, the show is here. So here's the beer. I kind of love that there's a little detail. It was even processed at the factory with a little Pone to Own tag on it.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's nice. Send me a
Right.
cake.
So unfortunately we did a good number on them last night, so we have very few left. This is my one souvenir beer left over, and I've got to go over and give a few of them to the folks at the Pone to Own room. So let's take you guys on more tours. Let's go see what's going on Pone to Own. Yeah,
They hacked the Tesla yet?
So there were 3 attempts. The first one succeeded. The second one was everybody's. Let's switch around the cameras. Everybody's been taking on the head unit. Say hi to the remote folks on Zoom. Pone to Own guys, fun girls and folks. Yeah. So let's here's the setup at Pone to Own. You're live on the Zoom. There's about 40 people watching you. So hi. Yeah. This is Kevin. So Kevin and I have been working for 3 years remotely, and we finally got to meet in person now. So this is more to make you guys remote guys jealous.
Yeah.
So they've got pretty slick setup. They've got amazing graphics this year. Say hi to folks. This is the remote folks on the Zoom.
Oh, wow.
Hey.
We're taking them on tour. And Dustin, the star. We're talking to all the folks on the Zoom. These are our speakers in India. Jay Beal's here, a whole bunch of folks. So
Awesome.
you know, let's let the people actually hear and see you. Hi,
Hey.
Jay.
Hi, everyone. How's it going?
Good.
Good.
Hey,
Good.
How are you?
We're very jealous we're not
We just
there.
took a screenshot.
Yeah, and I know. I you know, this technology stuff. It's
It's
all
It's for the birds.
Yeah. You know, I think it's a passing fad, really.
I do too. I don't think there's any money in this internet thing.
No, not at all. Hacking cars, though. I mean,
Hacking cars, that's the
a
way to
different-
go.
Yeah.
That was fun. If you haven't seen it yet, check out our Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
@CEI. We had one of the teams hack the Tesla. They popped the windshield wipers back and forth. They popped the front.
It was very
lights and
dramatic
lights.
video. It was really slick.
And they did it remotely too, which was pretty cool. So standing outside the car on their keyboard, boom, got it.
Yeah, remote trunk pop. That's
Pretty
kind of
fun.
pretty cool. Yeah.
It was worth $75,000 to them. So
Mm.
that's a nice little reward.
Thanks, man.
Very
Yeah, we're
good.
just giving people on break, so I'm kind of giving the remote folks filler right now. So we use video games, and what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna actually just start up the Zoom room so you guys can actually drop in here.
Let's see. Maybe if the laptop doesn't crash. What's going on? Maybe if I press the right power button. Or we'll let that boot. So we'll take you guys for more tour. What else? What's going on here? So that's basically the Pondone setup.
Which team did the team did that
oops, hold on a second. I can't
thing on
hear
the
you yet.
Tesla?
I'm just gonna
Sure.
plug my headset back in. There we go. Now we go. So lovely day in Vancouver.
Hey Jay, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, which team, or how do we find on Twitter the video of what
So
the
one of
team
the
did to
one
that
of the
Tesla?
one of the yeah, go to thezdi.com, and
Yep.
that's where the trunk popping video is. And all I know so far is one of the teams that got it was through the entertainment head unit. It was from Synactive, and they had to do a 3 exploit chain to actually finally get to their victory condition. So they got, I guess Justin just said 75,000. Oh, all right, thanks, man. I was just handed an LTE modem. One of the interesting challenges of all this is we're just getting all the stuff set up with the hotel networking going right, because as you can imagine, we've got tons of people going to Zoom on the hotel network. We're doing this right now over Wi-Fi or LTE, and lots of moving pieces for bandwidth. But I'm happy to report the bandwidth is getting much better. Like, we've been able to, yesterday we were streaming out the Tesla attempt. Our Starlink didn't work, but we managed to get 3 video streams and the remote contestants Zoom all streaming out over my phone. So that was pretty impressive, actually, to get that many video stream sessions and everything else over my phone's hotspot. So the LTE networks in this part of the city have gotten much better than in previous years.
Hey Dragos,
what we've seen.
Are we gonna at some point get a satellite hacking competition?
You know, I funny you should say that, because I've always my flippant comment is we really need a satellite competition where the victory condition is to deorbit a satellite for real. But
you're about to give Elon Musk a headache.
You know, if I think that it's a good goal, and it'd be a demonstration that would finally get folks really sort of active and going in that area. I mean, maybe launch a small disposable satellite or something, and you know,
satellites.
and it's not like we don't have a lot of junk up there, and the idea is to deorbit, right? You want to get the junk out of the way. So anyway, but that's a little bit down the line. I think we're doing pretty well with cars. I think, you know, what I'd really like to see is more manufacturers do what Tesla's doing. I think that they've really been doing. So, you know, one things we found out at least I found out last night, is that Tesla actually seeded a whole bunch of the entertainment units in the Tesla unit are very expensive. So they actually seeded a bunch of units to various development teams to let them attack. So as a result, most of the all the entries except the one that was going for the Ethernet port were all attacking the entertainment unit in the car. So they're starting to see dividends in terms of vulnerabilities. They're closing off of that investment into security teams having the hardware, because with car hacking, the getting access to hardware is really the hardest part. And so I think they're being really progressive, and I'd personally really like to see other manufacturers do that too. So
what you're saying is that forensics folks like us that do acquisitions on cars, we're going to start getting busy, eh?
Oh, absolutely. So, you know, the other interesting part about this, and I've sounded a little like a broken record, is that we had to have 2 Teslas parked outside. One was an Intel architecture, and the other was an AMD architecture. So they're just like laptops now. You got to worry about what CPU is inside there, and if you're for your target and that. So now I'm going to make you guys jealous again. Here's the breakfast. Let's see what we got. Ooh.
You had me when you said eggs Benedict.
Yeah. The hotel here treats us very, very, very nicely. So, thanks.
Oh, I'm hungry now.
I'm probably going to go back for a second helping as soon as we get things going for our next presentation. Let's go talk to folks here.
I swear I'm coming next year. I'm coming in person. This was...
It's Jay and a whole bunch of people online.
Hi, what are you doing?
Hey, good to see you, Yuriko.
And I don't know if let's turn up the volume here. I should be able to hear you.
Hi, what are you doing?
You're also being streamed out over the internet, by the way. It's on YouTube and on Twitter to 24,000 people. So just so you guys know.
Oh yeah, just so we don't feel self-conscious.
Right now, it's live.
Smiles and giggles from Victoria.
It's all good.
Please move.
So you got to get over this. We have to get over this shyness thing. We're on cameras all the time.
Whether we know it or not.
You're also being streamed to Twitter to 24,000 people.
Correct. The egg benedicts were really, really good. The only problem was I was eating it. I spoke a little myself.
Ah, okay.
So unfair. We won't be
so I'm not. Hold on a second. Oh, what a problem here. There. Now I'm getting audio. Now I can hear you, Jay. Now Yuriko can hear you. So let's. Now Jay can hear you.
Okay. Well,
she's running away from me.
Hi. We are, and
all say
that we're
hi,
totally
they can hear
jealous
you.
we're not there in person.
You know, everybody's jealous about breakfast.
Yes.
It's Justin Searle. You're live on Twitter and everything else, and everybody. We're actually getting interaction. So I gave away a bottle of scotch to the first person that
very nice.
turned on the camera. So now all of a sudden we've reached that magic interaction.
Well, very good, but I'm missing the talk I wanted to catch.
It's a break time. It's second breakfast. Go get some eggs.
They haven't started the other
No,
one.
no. We're running about half an hour late. Yeah, the EBPF will be good. I'm really interested to see what Guillaume's going to do about
I've been playing around.
grab some eggs and chillax. See us, dude. All right. Go over here and talk to folks. Hey, you're live on Twitter and YouTube and everything else. And talking to Jay and people on conference.
Remember you from yesterday. Nice talk.
Thank you. It was slides and all. It was fun going back and
a lot of content in there. So it kind of filled me up quite a bit.
I'm so glad. I was worried before the talk that it didn't have enough. And then I got there and I'm like, oh no, what have I done?
So, you know what, that's I've always wondered. Every speaker always does this. So they come in with 100 slides and they think, oh, I might not have enough detail on this or whatever. And it's like, I've always wondered why this inadequate, it's like this imposter complex in speakers.
Well,
and it's usually the speakers that are the most prepared and the most methodical that are worried about it, right?
Yeah, but CanSec CanSec has been, is and has been such a deeply technical conference that it gives all of us like a lot of nervousness, a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of like, I better bring my A game and I better bring like my A+ game because this is CanSec. I can't, it's absolutely one of the most technical conferences, and the people attending are going to be definitely have very high standards, and that's why they came.
Yeah.
Before I blow too much smoke up, in drag direction.
I think
that's why I was nervous.
Up your ass in the Navy, but it is a really technical audience.
But that's truly why I was nervous. I'm like, wait, what if I don't bring enough and keep to the same standard all the other speakers are keeping to? And so, I agonized over that.
You always underestimate your Jedi masterness.
You rock, man.
All right, we'll keep wandering around. So we'll also be live. So yesterday I got to apologize, Jay. So Zoom's rolled out an update and they've done something. Right when we're listening to this, they've improved lag like incredibly. I was listening and they were getting like maybe 200 to 700 milliseconds lag on a Zoom where in my ear as I was streaming it from Zoom while we were streaming it out through a bunch of codecs and stuff. And the lag that whatever they did with the update yesterday, they really fixed a lot of things with lag and made it just a lot more usable for real-time stuff. So this is interesting. The upshot of it, however, is they also screwed up our Zoom. We were counting on Zoom recordings So somebody's just commented, looks like about 50 milliseconds right now, and that's incredible because our ping time to our local host is probably 27 of those milliseconds, and so to the local internet, whatever, or even if they have a colo farm located here, you're 14 milliseconds to the next switch, and then probably another 10 milliseconds through the uplink through there, and then whatever processing for the codec is. That's really, really actually very impressive. So I was getting to a long apology. So we were counting on the Zoom recordings. So we actually I don't think we have recordings of your talk. We recorded some cameras with mics and things. We may be able to salvage it before I speak, but our main recording from the Zoom looks like it was corrupted. We just got a message that says your recording was prematurely stopped.
Well, that's great news for me, Dragos. It means that if you let me record again, then that kerfuffle we had where I started off not sharing my slides, we get to skip right past that.
Yeah, let's see if you're up to recording another video.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Let's get it fresh.
Because honestly, I was listening to you, honestly, sincerely or candidly, your talk. I was listening to your talk, and you kind of walk through a lot of stuff. I mean, just me as a pen tester, I actually want that video to go back to for the next time I encounter a Kubernetes thing. I think you are the encyclopedic authority when it comes to that. So I think it was really good value for anybody who's approaching those kinds of environments and trying to beat on their security.
Oh, there are shoulders of giants. There are a whole bunch of people who are more encyclopedic than me, and a whole bunch of.
As always, your humility does you credit.
Well, it is true. There are just some amazing.
There's a lot of
people in this field.
That's the thing is there's so many bright people in this industry, and so many. It's we all have to make sure our feet reach the ground because there's always someone smarter, cleverer, and has more spare time to do research than someone. So that's just how it goes.
Well, reach out to me on Discord or Signal, Dragos. I would love to set up a time and do a.
We'll do it up. I'm personally just at the end of finishing a year-long project for an audit and this conference and setup and stuff. So I'm actually taking a couple of days off after this weekend.
Yeah, and, I would expect. That's why I said reach out to me in text and didn't say like, oh, let's just do it at the end of the conference today. I can imagine. Come to the end of the conference, you are going to just fall down hard.
Let's show you guys. So this is what happens when you join the lobby room. This is just so you guys to get some context here. Here's where the lobby is, and there's a projector over here, and there's a meeting owl. So you guys are welcome to drop in on the lobby and chat with folks here. This is Jay. We're
hey Jay,
and also just as a caveat, we're also being live streamed to the internet and Twitter.
Yes, I know.
That's all.
Hey Jay.
Hey, it's been forever, man.
I know. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I mean, there's a ton of as Drago said, there's a ton of us on the other end of these on the other end of this camera and
yeah. We have to next year. You're going to do Kubernetes here.
Yeah, darn straight.
Real training.
We should do a training. We should do some kind of a informal free workshop. Like all kinds of stuff. And then we should find a. Man, I should get some of the great breakfasts there and the amazing.
Yep.
I miss LobbyCon because the bars at that hotel, are just amazing conversation. So
I know that's why I came. Glad I made it.
Yeah.
So you just gave me a bad idea because I just realized I haven't had my breakfast tequila yet.
Oh no.
So,
I promise, Dragos.
I have to find a victim to do this. I know someone who I can always twist their arm. I'm gonna go and get Kevin from the ZDI team, and I think we need to go down to Hotel Bar while you guys are waiting. Let's. How are we doing for time here?
So we're running a half hour behind.
Yes. So we got about 10 more minutes.
Yeah.
All right, that's enough time to sneak down.
I'll come.
You go. Let's. All right. I have my willing victim. Let's go do this.
Hi, David.
Are you up for a breakfast shot of tequila with the people on Zoom and being streamed live to the internet?
Dragos, could you say bye to David? Dragos, could you say bye to David for me?
Let's go do this.
Bars open.
You know, I'm not sure about that, but I have a backup plan because Martin provided me with a bottle. Martin provided me with a bottle of tequila. Yeah, well, I'm already on the Zoom, and we're already live streaming this to the internet, so I'll be able to see you when you come on. Let's go down here. Let's switch the view.
Yeah.
It looks like the bar is open. We have. Let's go over here. Let's do this. All right. Hello. So I'll switch this camera around. We've got all our remote attendees watching us, and we're gonna have a shot of breakfast tequila, if that's okay.
All right, breakfast.
Breakfast tequila, which would be the Casamigos over there on the right. Yes, 3 shots with slices of orange, please. Oh, wait, actually, you know what? It looks like we need 4. Tom, are you in for a shot of tequila? Okay, we're also live streaming it to the internet too, so it looks like we need 6. Just put this over here. 6, please, with slices of orange. Let's put it here so we can get a nice view. We're trying to involve the remote audience, right? Watching from the platform with some comments. Shots. So maybe it's a lunch. Yeah, you know, this is fine breakfast tequila. So I always make the joke. So the first one's great because it literally wakes me up. The second one is ridiculous. That's the dangerous one.
And do you want the Pepsi?
Yes, please. Oh, they know. They know. Let's see. All right. Jay's back. It's the one that puts you on here. Yeah, that's good.
All right, Dragos. Cheers.
Oh, someone's having a shot with us. All right. So this is say hi to the bartender. This is our remote attendees for our conference, and someone's pulled out a shot.
We'll wait.
Shots on a workday. Friday, pushing code.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Ladies first. I think we're going to do one more shot. One more, please. And we're live streaming it on the internet. That's what you want
I didn't have any tequila,
So
so
our goal is to make them envious so that they come here in person next year. There you go. That's really my secret. Uh-oh, I think we can do one more. One more, please. Thank you. Maybe, yeah. No, that's the right number. Yeah, please. Thanks. And cheers to the internet. Cheers to all you.
Cheers, folks.
all right.
Bye. Yeah, I like this tradition. I think we're going to continue this live streaming tequila shots thing. Okay. And I'm gonna leave. We're gonna head back up because I think it's about time to start the next session. So, yeah, I'll be back for signing it as soon as I finish getting our session going. Thank you very much. You guys are lovely as always. Say hi to the internet.
Hello, Internet.
All right. LobbyCon. Head back to our motley crew of hackers. Myself in so I can hear you and you guys get better mics. A lovely day. They're building a giant new building across the street here.
How bad was the wind for you guys on Wednesday afternoon? Were you guys getting a lot of wind?
I didn't notice anything in particular windy, but we are indoors in this giant building most of the time. Okay, hold on a second. Some other folks. Here's some folks who make this conference possible. The folks from For All Secure, they've got a table of stuff. They've done some courses, and they actually did one of the coolest things I think of all the sponsors is they actually flew some students in for the conference because one of my hot buttons is trying to get more sort of young people interested in this field, and these guys are doing amazing stuff. So, thank you, folks. All right, it looks like we're going into the conference hall now. It's Ron, good morning. Say hi to the internet, we're live streaming. JBL and a whole bunch of people. Hey, hold on, let's let Jay hear you here.
Hey man, how you doing?
Hey, good.
Cheers, love the talk yesterday.
Thank you, love the beard, whoa.
Okay,
It's been
let's
forever.
go. All right. We'll give folks some behind. Oh. It should. No. Check, check. That's really bad quality. You're listening to me on Zoom. That's not my mic. Can you give me my mic? This is me. Let's try this. All right, folks can hear me on Zoom. Looks like our speaker is active. Except we seem to have audio problems here. Check. Okay, that's much better. All right. So, oh, you want the slides? Sorry. Try this. Here we go. So I think the jury is still out which is actually more of a hassle, screwing around with HDMI and resolutions and monitor mirroring, or Zoom and getting the audio to work. I think you're okay. I can take. Hello? Maybe. That is all live. This is all going out over the internet. Yeah, the screen capture, actually, that shouldn't add that much lag, really.
That's still in
Zoom. Oh, so we're watching it through Zoom. Which is there? No, you're looking at the easy cap. That's the screen capture.
There you go. Bingo. I think we have launch conditions. On that note, go for it.
All right, sorry about the delay there. Zoom was covering up his presentation. All right, so our next speaker is
Slide a foot to
our
the
next
left.
speaker is Adam Doherty from CrowdStrike. He's going to be talking about low-level remote systems, things like ILO and out-of-band management. I don't know how many people actually patch their ILO on their boxes, but it doesn't really matter what your security is if people can directly access memory through ILO. So anyway, this will be a really interesting talk, and I hope you guys will find it really helpful for providing some actual security.
No, not yet. We're not getting you through the audio.
Oh, fantastic. How about now? Now?
Check, check.
Check,
No,
check, check. One,
not
two.
yet. Still not yet.
Awesome. I used to do this stuff in high school, and the AV nerd in me is like,
great.
Just let me get over there.
Are we there? Give us
Check, check.
Oh yeah.
Hey,
Loud and
that's fantastic.
Let's get you.
All right, I'm just gonna open this up real quick. Hopefully,
So as I was telling the folks on the Zoom, this is, if you guys didn't get it by now, this is a very hands-on conference, and most of the folks who actually do the work on our tech team were actually pretty security oriented ourselves. For instance, those of you guys that showed up to the bar last night, Iman, who was serving us beer, he also got his CVE yesterday. So and he was one of our presenters that did a talk on Bitcoin security last year. So he was very graciously serving booze for all of us last night. All of the folks here who actually are on our tech team are probably work for security companies, various companies. I said that's why our video guy got pulled off to maintain ZOS code and for emergency. That's one of the reasons we're kind of scrambling around. As I said, he got a call yesterday that there was a piece of code written in 1984 that broke, and it was causing the billing system for one of the large major telcos to belch. That seemed like a good excuse to me. So we're scrambling around. With that, let me stop interrupting, and please, a big hand.
yeah, thanks very much. I think the best part of this is you've all had something to eat. So, you know, if you hate it, at least you're full of food, right? So with that, I will say the purpose of this talk is to talk about some proactive security stuff. I'll introduce myself. I'm Adam Doherty. I work for CrowdStrike in their proactive security team, doing strategic assessments. You know, I come in and I assess the posture of your environment, assessing, you know, what controls you have in place, how effective they are, yada, yada, yada. You know, we don't do audits. We come and assess your security so that we can make actionable recommendations to help make you more secure. And so this talk kind of stems out of the stuff that I've done over the last 20 plus years as I call myself a professional problem solver. You know, I don't do exploits. I don't do security research or anything like that. But you know, to me, this is something that's valuable. I can be reached on Twitter, I guess. I guess that's a thing people use, and people are using it. So feel free to reach out to me there if you want to chat. I'm going to make a copy of this deck available there when I'm finished. So what are we talking about today? I'm super impressed with modern infrastructure. Like, we've got the cloud. It's driven new ways of working and experiencing things and collaborating. It's pretty darn impressive. I think the thing that I find most impressive about that is the idea that the units of work keep getting smaller. We've got containers, we've got serverless, which is really just a callback to RPC for anybody who's familiar with those kind of days. But we've got virtual machines, we've got all of these layers on top that make the units of work smaller. I myself am really kind of hoping that unikernels take off from a security perspective. I mean, you can't attack what isn't there. That said, all of this is really great for attack surface reduction because those units of work do get smaller. But have you ever taken a minute to think about what's at the other end of the scale? Looking up, sometimes we forget to look at where we're going on the ground. And so, get out of the clouds for a minute and come down to ground level. And let's talk about the elements of security that we forget about. So, what do we have here? Right, there's systems that you can see up there, access control systems, IoT stuff that we've talked about in this conference. You've got HVAC, building automation, things of that nature. And that is the thing that we tend to forget about. We've got all of these systems down here that we're not paying attention to. And specifically, what I want to speak to, at least in the initial part of this talk, is the idea of out-of-band remote management, otherwise known as IPMI or IDRAC or what have you, depending on the vendor. Down at this level, you have got a system within a system that is deployed to effectively every server that's in production today, right? And the system at this level has full control of that hardware, and the risks that are inherent with that. We've got a modern security stack, but we have no real security at this level. It becomes an area that is effectively forgotten because it's something that nobody's really interested in, I guess, is the way to describe it. Everybody's interested in the latest and greatest exploits, and we tend to forget what's down here. But you've got like super old technology down at this level. Intel introduced IPMI back in 1998, and it's been around for a really long time. And the technologies that it's built upon have been around for a lot longer than that. And so, you see here, it's accessible by a number of interfaces. You've got web interfaces down at this level. You've got Telnet, you've got SSH if you're lucky. Although if you go and look at it, in a lot of cases, it's really old versions of SSH that are vulnerable themselves. And so when you look at the things at this level, it leads us to ask questions of the security that's here. The software at this level, what's being done to manage and maintain this stuff, and what's great for system administrators, right? Is definitely also great for threat actors. Now, the screenshot that's up here, I took this morning. It's about 9 o'clock this morning. This is just a screenshot from Shodan showing almost 70, almost 70,000 devices exposed to the internet via the IPMI protocol, port 623 for anybody who's interested in doing a scan while they sit here. This is, this is great and valuable open source intelligence for threat actors. And, down at this level, these devices control your servers. Access to IPMI is effectively the security that you see here. And for those who can't make it out, that is a barrier gate somewhere. But people just drive around it, and that effectively describes the inherent dangers that exist at this level. Right, we've got an entire modern security stack that sits in our environment. Antivirus, EDR, XDR, I guess is the new thing, right? We've got all these security tools in all of these environments, these various levels in our organization, and it can all be completely bypassed by getting down to these low-level interfaces. This is what I would call a checkmate scenario. And like I said, it suffers from a number of weaknesses. Am I going backwards, forwards? Right. Okay. So I like to describe it as an insecure protocol for managing infrastructure. And down here, there's no security tools. There's no safety net, right? Weak implementations of protocols and the use of default passwords, all the standard stuff that within the security space we tell people, not to do, all gets done at this level. And if you've ever looked at the web interfaces at this level, the security auditing is non-existent and would make the people over at the OWASP project cry. Now there's an asterisk there you can see, and really what that comes down to is the idea that there is a safety net of a sort if you pay for it. A lot of these interfaces are proprietary to the companies that manufacture the servers. They implement the standard in the way that they choose. And Dell, for example, with their iDRAC products, will go ahead and license different levels of functionality, which, if you pay more money, gets you some sense of security in air quotes. What can possibly go wrong? Well, there's more than we'd like to admit sometimes. But this is just a small list that I've put together. I'm sure the people in this room with the capabilities and the talks that I've seen here at CanSecWest could come up with a lot longer list. But the idea at this level that you could go ahead and do something as simple as reset your storage array. If you've got your backups down there, or you've got your VMs running at that level, if you can reinitialize that storage array, all that stuff is gone. So I hope you're doing offsite backups, because everybody does those, right? Show of hands, who here is doing offsite backups in multiple locations? Yeah, that's generally what I expect. Yeah, one or two hands, and yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, but I mean, we've got lots of interesting ideas down here, right? Because this is a fully embedded computer running down at this level. We've got the capacity to mount OS images, live Linux environments, and once you boot those up at this level, I mean, you can mount the file systems that exist on storage and drop your malware straight into the file system, completely bypassing any of the security tools at this level. You know, drop a payload down at this level that persists beyond replacing the hard drives. Just go ahead and inject things into firmware. It's all possible at this level. I myself couldn't do it, I will admit that, but I know that there are folks in this room who probably could. I like to look at it this way. IPMI is God mode, right? And it's God mode meets Visa, right? It's everywhere you want to be. So, you know, think about that as a threat vector the next time you're doing an assessment of the systems in your environment. So with that, I want to take a few minutes and just leave the discussion about IPMI. Let's look at those systems as a target for threat actors, the thing that they actually want to get to, because it can create that havoc. What other things lurk down here? And I'm going to continue the Doom theme because it's probably one of the greatest games ever made. And it runs on everything. In this case, this is Doom running on a Honeywell thermostat, right? And if I can get Doom running on a thermostat, right? You think about that, that's just a computer running software, right? So what's to stop somebody from using that thermostat as a pivot point? And that's the problem. Or a printer. I don't know how well you can make that out. That printer there says insert coin because this printer has been compromised. And yeah, again, just a system running software connected to the network. Security cameras. Samil's presentation there, VMUX the other day with the IoT cameras, right? So just software running on hardware. Doesn't really matter what the software is running at that level. If it's got a processor and you know, the capability to have software written to that system, why not? All of these systems are network connected computers running software with weak security, default passwords, sporadic updates, and likely no monitoring. I'm going to put an asterisk there and say that I find gambling pretty boring. That, and I'm bad at it. Just ask my wife. But I would bet that likely is probably generous. So are we sensing a theme here yet? These devices exist inside the boundaries of our networks with implicit trust. And that, again, is part of the problem, is that implicit trust. So, you know, what can we do? There's quite a bit, actually. And this is where the consultant in me is now going to come out and talk about the proactive side of things here. Segment your network, your services, and your applications, right? And what you can see here on the screen, this is just a nondescript apartment block. But what's interesting about apartments is you don't necessarily know what's going on with your neighbors. I lived somewhere for 7 years and didn't know my neighbors at all, right? So that is a compartmentalized sort of a process, a segmentation, if you will. Everybody is living in the same space, but You don't know what your neighbors are doing. They don't know what you're doing. And traditionally, we've looked at security as a castle with a hard outer wall, but a soft center. And I prefer to see it as, we should be moving to a model of apartment buildings, right? Where things are segmented and separated at the network level, at the service level, at the application level, at the process level, right? Getting into the idea of making these units smaller and smaller and preventing the communication amongst them and between them, right? One path in, one path out, and make sure it's pre-planned, pre-approved, and relentlessly monitored, right? Prevent those east-west data flows, and ensure you've got things like VLANs. VLANs are fantastic, but I also like to see physically separate networks where it makes sense, especially when you get into discussions around the idea of hospitals or critical infrastructure, right? I shouldn't be able to compromise your Exchange server in the enterprise and affect critical clinical technology that's keeping somebody alive in an ICU. But unfortunately, that is something that can happen and something that has been seen. We've seen hospitals, subject to ransomware, and ransomware showing up on medical devices in clinical areas of the hospital. No segmentation that exists. Use a dedicated host for these types of management activities, right? Nobody is doing personal work on their work laptop. I mean, maybe you are. I don't. I wouldn't recommend it. But when you're doing administrative activities and interacting with administrative systems that have a impact on the health of your enterprise and your infrastructure, do it on a dedicated system and lock that system down, keep it up to date, and restrict access to only those who need it. And go that extra step that everybody pushes now. Utilize MFA and use physical MFA. I actually use a YubiKey on my personal devices, and I highly recommend that you use those in your enterprise, especially for critical systems and those that are supporting your enterprise. And the other thing here is, ensure that host itself isn't tied to the authentication system of your enterprise, right? If you have a compromise of the domain in your environment, you're giving the threat actors or bad actors, access to that host. So make sure that the authentication on this system is completely separate. And this chestnut, change default passwords, right? Like, make this the first thing that you do. Seriously. In fact, we should be forcing vendors to make this the first and only thing that you can do with the device. You plug it in and you turn it on. The only thing you can do is change that default password. Disable default accounts, right? Default accounts don't create accountability. Create accounts, create accountability. Remove the default accounts if possible. And, I understand how these environments work and the situations that people can be in, right? Create a single, i.e. one, break glass account and store that password for that account somewhere deep inside a privileged access management tool. If that account gets used, right, like doomsday alarms should be going off in your SOC, right? Everybody should know when a break glass account is being used. Update your firmware, right? Like everything else, remember, it's just software, and software is full of vulnerabilities, right? whether it's a firewall or a switch or an IP camera, right? It's just software running on a computer. Disable those unnecessary services. I mean, why is your printer running a mail server, right? Your mail server is for mail. Why is your printer running that? Or FTP or any other insecure service that you can think of. You know, if you don't need these services, turn them off. This one, I don't think gets talked about enough. Just remove the gateway configuration. Data can't leave if it has no way to get out. It's a very simple and very effective technique. I hope that comes across okay. Color scheme is a little terrible on the table, but stop using outdated and insecure protocols. Specifically Telnet. It's 53 years old this year, and we're still using it. In fact, it actually predates the implementation of TCP/IP. HTTP itself, the non-TLS version is 31 years old this year, and SNMP, which is used for interacting with all sorts of systems from a management perspective, is also just a little older than that. So, you know, there are secure alternatives to all of these, and we need to make sure that we're using them. So please do. Turn off remote access altogether. I mean, if you can walk over to it, you don't need to access it over the network. I used to work in an automation lab where the rack was right next to my desk. I had a KVM there. I did not need to remote into those systems. I could just walk over. So if that's an option, it's a good one. So this is a concept that I would like to introduce to folks. Is the idea of getting loud, which is, you know, go and locate and organize those unmanaged devices that you have in your environment, right? Those devices that people don't know are there or have forgotten about, or, you know, show up in a spreadsheet that, you know, hasn't been edited in 10 years, right? Go actually find those devices in your environment and, you know, get them into an asset inventory that's updated and modern, right? So people actually know that they're there and know what they should be doing with them. And then the second part to that is make noise, which stands for notify ops of infrastructure supporting your enterprise, right? They can't monitor devices that they don't know about. And so as a combination of these two exercises, you should be able to identify those assets in your environment that are critical to your business that you want your security team to monitor. And then log all the things, right? It's one of those things. You can't know what's happened if you don't know it's happened. And if you are logging it, log it somewhere else. Of course, I told you to just, you know, turn off gateways and remote access. So how do you go and do something like that? Well, set up a forwarding proxy. Send your logs there and send them out from there. And when you do send them out, send them to an immutable database, somewhere that, you know, is not something that can be overwritten by an attacker, right? Say the word escapes me here, non-repudiation. And this one may be a new concept for folks, but maybe not. It's the idea of mapping, monitoring, and justifying all of the data flows that exist in your environment, right? Just because something is connected and talking Should it be connected and talking, right? Have you done an assessment of why these devices and services are talking to each other, right? If it doesn't have a valid business justification, then it shouldn't be doing it. And if it breaks something, talk to the people that need it and get it documented so that you know about it and know how to secure it. Server A should only talk to server B using protocol C to interact with application D, right? That's the key to the idea of knowing, network situational awareness. You want to know what's going on in your environment. Know the when, why, where, and how of the data moving throughout your network. Be draconian with the rules, right? That's the rules on your firewalls, the rules on your IDS, your IPS, and any other security appliance that we have, right? No rule should ever come as a surprise to anybody, right? Add useful comments and keep them up to date, right? Audit them regularly by actually testing them, right? Because misconfiguration and bad ACLs, these are the things that we see that cause compromise in these environments. Same goes for any of the other controls that you have. Security is a balancing act, and yes, users are going to go ahead and push back. But if you can justify to them why this needs to be done and explain to them why security is important, then I think it's something that can be effectively done. But of course, you've heard all of this before. And, it doesn't come as a surprise to anybody, especially anybody in this room. I know this. But, that being said, what do we do about it? Right? Automate all of it, right? No team has got unlimited budget, unlimited resources, or unlimited time, right? I've spoken to security teams that are 4 people, 5 people, 15 people, 50 people. It just depends on the organization and the resources they have available. But, none of it is unlimited. So if you have to do anything more than once, it deserves to be automated. So let's get more automation into this space. Make the attack path really expensive, right? An attacker is going to move on if that attack path is really expensive, right? Because doing so requires more time, effort, tooling, and talent on their part. And if you make it expensive enough, they're going to move on to an easier target. They'll move on to your competitor, maybe. Who knows? But if you think about a facility that is surrounded by high walls, and that itself is surrounded by high scale resistant fences with razor wire and cameras and seismic sensors and vehicle barriers and armed guards with dogs, right? You're less likely to try to break into that place because you're more likely to get caught, right? And that's how we need to be treating our enterprise environments. We need to be ensuring that that attack path is really expensive. And this is really a note to managers. Security isn't a sunk cost, right? We have to remember that. Proper controls up front are a heck of a lot cheaper than incident response services and everything that comes along with a security incident. Those proactive measures are always going to be cheaper. It's like going to the dentist, right? You go for a regular checkup, and that's infinitely better than a mouthful of cavities and needing fillings or a root canal. Same goes for security controls. Stop thinking that you can just put it off, ignore it, or make it somebody else's problem. And this is one of my favorites because I've worked in organizations where exceptions were in some cases the rule. It was just easier to write a document, to have paper, to say, you know what, we're going to accept this risk and create an exception for it. But paper is not going to protect you in the event of an incident. You know, accepting or transferring risk to somebody else, like cyber insurance, right, doesn't prevent anything. It just means that you'll pay for it later. And in the case of insurance, it means that your rates may go up and everything else. So, you know, think about that the next time somebody says, hey, we'll just create an exception. I like to do a little bit of programming. The idea of exceptions, I don't like them. Exceptions should be exceptional, not the rule. And you know, just remember that if you're down at this level, you know, if a actor or bad apple gets down here at this level, you've got bigger problems, right? Because again, it goes back to the idea that the systems at this level and the control at this level give you access to the resources that could impact life support systems, could impact financial systems, could impact you know, critical infrastructure that controls who knows what, your building automation systems, your HVAC. You know, if it gets down to this level, you really should have covered up that exhaust port. And you know, to that end, I'll say, you know, remember to turn the lights off. And that's really a reference to the idea that this remote out of band management is called lights out technology by some organizations, right? Don't give threat actors something to grasp onto. Don't let them shortcut the security in your environment. Turn out the lights and hide this infrastructure and secure it well. And remember that incidents are not accidents, right? Be proactive, be aware, and prevent security events from becoming security incidents. I would like to say that the information that I gathered for this can really be found in the work of Dan Farmer and H.D. Moore, who did stuff with IPMI years ago. I actually had an email conversation with Dan prior to coming to this conference, and I asked him, I said, you know, in the 10 years or so since you've given the original talk on the insecurity of IPMI, you know, what have you seen change? And his response to me was not much. You know, we've got this thing called redfish, redfin. I can never remember, and I apologize, but it's supposed to be an enhancement, a more secure option for working at this level. But really what it comes down to is we've now got insecurity with a REST API. So, you know, that's fun. You know, so please think seriously about the hardware that you have running at this level, because remember, these machines run your hypervisors, they run your container environments, they are responsible for making the cloud what it is. And if you can shortcut the modern security stack, you can collapse it all. And with that, I'll say thank you.
So Adam, really appreciate your talk. Back in 2008, I gave a talk on this same topic, and it's nice to see that people are still thinking about this. It's unfortunate to see that people are not doing anything about it. we're going to have a talk after lunch about printer security, which is another thing that I mentioned in that same talk in 2008. So it's great to see that. Are there any questions from the audience? No? Do you mind if I add a couple more comments in my experience?
Yeah.
So Dell finally, after years and years of yelling at him, no longer ships iDRACs with default passwords. They now ship each server with individual unique passwords, which are on a pullout card, which your data center logistics people hate. But I tell you, it's a big step in the right direction.
Yeah, and that's if you have iDRAC 9.
Yes.
So I'm a consultant, and I'm going to say that I'm going to throw a swag out here, a scientific wild ass guess. But if you've got 200 vendors supporting IPMI and they're making, call it 10,000 servers a year, and this is, low end, doing that for the last 10 years, that's at least 20 million systems with this low level infrastructure available to it. And so, like I say, that's a low end guess. This stuff is incredibly valuable. It may not be as directly exposed to the internet as it was when Dan and HD wrote their papers, but you can see this stuff from the inside, and the potential for insider threats, or to be able to pivot from a phishing email after you've managed to compromise an enterprise environment. The world isn't flat. So why are our corporate networks, right? Segment.
Which is great. Segue to my second comment, which is I love that you say remove the gateway. Personally, in implementations I've done, I stick a security gateway in there and you turn on NAT so you can NAT through the security gateway. And then also, it's great if that security gateway has application firewall and IDS in it, because then you can alert based off of the traffic that's going there and make the SOC aware of things that are happening. So that's a really great way of dealing with that. Also, unfortunately, with Dell, you have to pay to get the authentication services with enterprise authentication, but you should definitely be thinking about using non-shared accounts. Every admin should have their own login to the system. You can tie the systems to LDAP, Radius, or AD. But like you said, it's good that external authentication be a different system. So you should have a different AD domain that you're using. Or I really like a separate Radius server, a Linux Radius server. And you can tie that into things like the YubiKeys or one-time passwords. Your admins are going to hate it, but they probably should not be logging in and doing everything in iDRAC. You'll find that people, once it's convenient, will start using that and they'll start bypassing the other methods of going in to do their system administration. So putting things like one-time password in there annoys them, but it also makes sure that they're doing their job the right way and that you get that logging and alerting and everything that's on your normal systems. And your SOC is actually aware when people are doing things at the back end level.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then you were also talking about cover the exhaust port. I love that. That's awesome. And yeah, if people are in this system, you've got a bigger problem. But don't forget to screen internally for threats. Your internal threats are the people that are most likely to be abusing and compromising these systems. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's all my comments. Thank you for your time. If there's any, we do have a question now.
Hey, all right.
I think I can walk around you.
Hi there, just a couple comments. I saw your Shoda numbers, and those are BMCs that are exposed to the internet. A properly configured BMC should never be exposed to the internet. Typically they're on their own maintenance backbone and it should actually be separated from the production network. And the whole purpose of that is so the BMCs can't talk to the OS and vice versa.
Absolutely.
My other question is, have you looked at Redfish or OpenBMC?
I have not actually looked at those from any sort of research perspective, but I know from folks that I've talked to, the security controls are not necessarily where we would like them to be. Although I will say, having come to this conference, it's inspired me to maybe look into this more from a security research perspective and see what's possible down at these levels, and maybe come back with a talk that actually has a demo to be able to show compromising these environments and how easy it actually is. So what I like to tell my clients is, if you're connecting it to the internet, you're doing it wrong. That's the advice that I give to them. And you look at the things that are coming out from CISA, and you look at anything that's coming out from any security organization when it comes to things that have led up to compromise. Really, at the end of the day, it's misconfiguration, it's bad security practices, right? And we have to ask ourselves as a community, if we're not doing them, can we really call them best practices? Like I said at the beginning of my talk, the idea of exploits and all of that sort of stuff is really cool. 0 days are really cool, but at the end of the day, we need to get back to the basics to help reduce the impact of events like that. It's not going to prevent these things, but if we can reduce the likelihood and reduce the impact of a security incident, we'll be that much further ahead.
Well said. Also, while you're looking at your OOB network and your management network, go look at your backup network. The backup networks are literally backing up all of your data, and I've seen some horribly insecure backup networks. They've done great jobs of protecting everything else. Backup systems, poorly defended.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say, my opinions are my own. I'm not speaking on behalf of my employer, but I will say, from what I've seen as a consultant, and knowing about some of the intelligence that's out there, we are seeing threat actors actively go after your backups directly. And, in some cases, nation state actors are utilizing these mechanisms to do so.
All right, so we're going to take 5 minutes to get set up for the next presenter. We're still 30 minutes behind. So if you just look at the schedule, we're exactly 30 minutes behind. Our next got a little too close to speaker. So our next topic is going to be extended Berkeley packet filter. So you're familiar with BPF for looking at packets on the network or Ethernet frames. Extended Berkeley packet filter lets you actually monitor at the kernel level, and it'll be a really interesting talk. So
specifically, I think Guillaume is going to be showing us how to look at SSL and TLS using BPF and using packet sniffers, which is, I think, the important part of that presentation there. So he's gonna, because everybody's lost a lot of visibility as everything went encrypted. So he's gonna show us regain a little bit of that visibility with that presentation.
All right, and we have a quick announcement from ZDI.
Oh, cool.
Everybody runs off. Let me give you a quick announcement. My name is Dustin Childs. For those who don't know me, I'm with the 0 Day Initiative. We do the Pondone competition. If you've been down to our room Orca, you might have noticed an Xbox. It's the digital one, Xbox One S, whatever it is. Here's the thing. I don't want to ship it back. I'm not shipping it anywhere, so I'm going to give it away. We're going to play a little trivia contest, and here's what we're going to do. First, you have to answer 4 questions. First question is, what is your name? I got to have that. Second question. How much did ZDI award for the very first Pondone? What was the amount number? Hang on. Third question now. What is the largest single payout for a single exploit we have paid in the history of Pondone? So for example, local elevation of privilege in Windows 11, we just paid $40,000. Not anywhere near the highest. What is the highest? Fourth and final question. How much did we pay out on our first day of the contest? Now, I don't want you to shout these questions. I need you to write them down and find me. I'm a moving target. The first person who can write down all 4 questions and bring them to me in a written form will win that Xbox One S, and then that'll be it. So real simple, free Xbox if you can find the trivia questions. So thank you.
I don't count, right?
Probably don't count.
Because I can answer all those right now.
Do you think so? I had to look the second one up.
Yeah. Well, I have a guess of the second one.
Check, check. Okay. While they do that, I guess I can tell you a joke. So in the future, you know, Vladimir Putin goes to hell, and then he, because he's done such a good job, he gets some time off. So he goes for a drink at a bar in Moscow in his 15 minutes that he's allowed off, and orders a beer and asks the bartender, "So, how did it go? Did we get to Donbass?" And the bartender says, "Yep." What about Lviv and Kiev? Yeah, we got those too. Oh, that's great. What do I owe you for the beer? €5. Anyway. I won't give up the day job, right? So. Let's see what you got up here. Let's give you video. All right. Looks like we've got everything here, sort of, mostly. Check. Okay, we're good. And what I think we got to do is switch over to Zoom to don't worry, they'll change all the options in a few months.
If you tie your enterprise Zoom into SAML authentication, you can have multi-factor authentication as well. Just a little tip.
Okay. All right. I think so.
So I'm excited. You're going to have to help me with your name here. I'm not great at the pronunciation.
Which one? Guillaume or the other
Yeah.
one? Guillaume.
Guillaume is going to talk about extended Berkeley packet filter. We're all familiar with Berkeley packet filter from, you know, doing our captures of network traffic, maybe some Ethernet frames. If you're really old school, maybe some FDDI or ancient stuff like that. Anyway, now we're going to be able to capture things at the kernel level, and this is really exciting talk. I hope you guys enjoy it. With that, maybe our presenter.
So let's start this. I will try to be on time for lunch. So I'm really happy to be here, to be back in Vancouver after this pandemic. If you don't know me, I'm one of the lucky SCAPI maintainers. And if you are willing to listen to me until the end of the talk, you can come to me and grab some stickers. I have some left. Currently, I'm the director of security research in a French company called Quarks Lab. So what we do, basically, we bring what we like to call cutting edge research to customers. So we help them to secure and perform audits. So today, I'm here to introduce something called eBPF. So this talk is not a highly technical talk. It's more like a training. So I want you to, on the weekend, I want you to experiment with eBPF as a security tool. I want you to try it yourself back home. And in this presentation, I will discuss use cases with many examples, and the focus will be on TLS protocol analysis. The setup we'll try to play with today is the following. We have something that I like to call the secret binary. We're running on Linux, on a host, because eBPF, that's a Linux-based technology. And this secret binary is communicating over the internet using the TLS protocol, and is trying to send data to the server. And we'll use eBPF to snoop on the secret binary process. So we'll have access to its memory and also at the traffic. If you want to follow, you can take a picture of this QR code that will be the slides. I think I also tweeted the information. So if you follow QuarkSlab, my company on Twitter, you will get access to everything here, including the tool that I will release at the end of the talk. Okay, we'll let you take some pictures. The slides are online anyway, so if you have any question, I can.
This is being streamed live too. You can just go to the YouTube link or.
Perfect. So eBPF 101. So let's start with a brief eBPF presentation. So something that you might know already, it's called CBPF or classical BPF. That's the old BPF that we are used to when dealing with network. So BPF helps you to define network packet filters that you are using with TCP dump. Internally, TCP dump takes this expression and compiles them to BPF bytecodes. That's really like a VM with real instructions. And this bytecode will be used by a TCP dump. It will attach this bytecode to a specific socket, a raw socket, and then the bytecode will be processed by the Linux kernel. And the really good stuff back in the days with BPF was to be able to parse network packets in the kernel and only receive the packets that you are interested into. So here, this example will filter packets sent and received from 1.1.1, which is a Cloudflare public DNS server, over TCP, and the protocol we want to filter is HTTPS. So everything will be done in the kernel, and in user space, you will have a few packets to process. TCP dump is kind enough to give us a representation of this bytecode. So if you are into reverse engineering and reading assembly, that's a slide for you. So you need to use the -d parameter, and here we have the representation of this BPF filter. The first line 3, that's a test. We check if the destination is 1.1.1.1. Line 7, we check the number 6, which is the value for TCP in the IP header. And finally, line 12, we check for the 453 port number, which is HTTPS. Something that you already know is how you can use a filter. You just give it to TCP dump, and TCP dump will only receive from the kernel the information that it asks for. In that case, that's these two packets. So what is eBPF? So it means extended packet Berkeley packet filter. It's like CBPF, but better. You have cool features. So it's designed to be JITted, just in time. So it means that there's a one-to-one mapping between the eBPF instruction and, for example, x86 instruction. So it also means that eBPF programs will run really fast. Unlike CBPF, with eBPF, you can do function calls. The Linux kernel is exposing specific functions, for example, to get the name of the process that is doing a syscall. And you can also call other eBPF programs. What we'll do today, we'll attach eBPF programs to events, kernel events that could be anything. In the eBPF world, we call that eBPF programs that have many types. XDP, that's for network, traceprobe, uprobe, and kprobe, that's specific probes that you can attach to Linux kernel function. That's a kprobe and tracepoint. And uprobe, you can attach your eBPF program to user space. So it's a bit like hook points. So if you're into smartphones, reversing, Frida is doing kind of the same. You can hook a function with a uprobe, the same way you do with Frida. The other really good stuff about eBPF is eBPF maps. That's a way to share data between kernel and user space. With classical BPF, once you compile your bytecode, it's not possible to change it and to change the way you want the Linux kernel to parse your packets. And eBPF maps allows you to do that. So what you could do with an eBPF maps and say, okay, I don't want you to send me data for 1.1.1 anymore. I want to change the address. I want it to be 8.8.8, which is a Google public DNS server. In the eBPF world, your world's best friend is called the eBPF verifier. So if you know Rust, there's something called the borrow checker, which is a bad friend, always trying to yell at you. So eBPF verifier is the same. So error messages are not so good, but ultimately its goal is to ensure the program safety, because you don't want to load anything and be able to access any kernel data. So eBPF verifier checks that you're only accessing memory inside your eBPF programs. If you are into vulnerability research and we call exploits, you could check recent CVE against the eBPF verifier, because there are a lot of recent research that show that you can actually bypass the verification and either read or write data into the Linux kernel, which is really bad. Next, I would like to focus on kernel probes. So internally, again, if you are into reversing, a kernel probe is just a breakpoint into any kernel function that will be in3 on Intel. And the kernel probe allows you to collect information, namely information you get from the syscall arguments, for example. So if you do a kernel probes on the connect syscall, you will get access to the destination address and port address of a process. Something you have to note with a kernel probe, a U probe, it's not possible to change a function behavior. So if you hook to connect, it's not possible for you to change the behavior of connect. You can only retrieve information. You can find two types of kernel probes that will be the same for user probes. The first one, kprobe, can be anywhere, could be at the start of a function, could be in the middle of a function, so any instruction. And the read probes, that's a hook you do when a function returns. It's really important to understand that, for example, if you take the receive syscall, when you do the receive syscall, you basically send an empty buffer from user space, and you are asking the kernel to fill it in the receive syscall. So if you hook on the kernel probe, so just before the receive syscall, the buffer will be empty. So what you want to do, you want to hook after the receive execution. So you want to do a kernel read probe in order to retrieve information. You can use kprobe manually. Another cool stuff is that kprobe and eBPF are not really related. So this example shows you how you can do that in 3 simple lines. Here, line 0, you just define a kprobe manually. You give it the name, CSW22. You attach it to the open@2 syscall. It was discussed yesterday in the Falco presentation. And then you kindly ask the Linux kernel to take the second argument of open@, convert it to a string, and display it to you. To enable your kernel probe, and here in this specific file called tracepipe, you have output, and you can see that here my secret binary is loading the libcurl dynamic library. So it's likely that this secret binary will use HTTPS. This is a cool trick that you could use when you need to debug stuff on Linux, because these kprobe are available since, let's call that the age of times. So why is eBPF interesting? Because that will extend the Linux functionalities like the kprobe. You don't need to change the Linux source code. You don't need to code your own modules. No one wants to do that. It's really cool because you can use it from user space. So you need specific capabilities, and namely cap BPF, but still it's really interesting. And it's portable. So eBPF expert will say it's more or less portable, because depending on the Linux distribution, that can change from one vendor to another. But still, you are supposed to be able to compile an eBPF program, for example, on my laptop, and then load it on a server. So internally, when you, as a developer, it looks like as follows. So this is an example of hooking to the execv syscall. All of these nice figures, I took them from the ebpf.io website. So if you are looking for really good resources, you should check this website. It's really really good, a lot of information. You have the link here on the right. So this eBPF program is written in C. You don't have much choices. That's mainly in C that you need to write this. First, we'll call an internal BPF function to retrieve the PID of the process. Then we'll call another BPF function to get the name of the process, and we'll send that to user space using an eBPF map. So we basically are just getting information from the syscall just before the syscall execution, and we send that to user space. So we have C. Next question is, we go from C to eBPF bytecode. So simple answer, you need a compiler. So you can do that with GCC, but the tool of choice is Clang and LLVM, because there's a backend for eBPF. To just compile your C codes into an ELF with eBPF bytecodes. These bytecodes must be loaded into the Linux kernel. So usually what we do, we use something called eBPF loaders that will take the ELF, that will take the definition of eBPF maps and send everything to the Linux kernel. If you are willing to do that manually, you can use a BPF syscall, but it's not that fun because you will need to fill a lot of Linux kernel structures. It takes a bit of lines and time to do. So this is a high-level overview of eBPF. First, you develop your probe, you compile it, or you ask the eBPF loader to compile it. Then you let the eBPF loader do some tricks, which is mainly loading the program, asking the verifier to check the program, JIT it, and inject it into the syscall. And finally, the other box on the right is more or less the user land space. In that case, we'll receive information from the syscall and write it to an eBPF map. Taking the example of the execve syscall, that's something that we can print. We can print a list of processes that are actually executed with execve and the PID. So in that case, I just highlighted the secret binary information. So last slide, related to eBPF tools. So what you have to know, unfortunately, you have a limited number of languages you can use to write the probes. That's mainly C and Rust as of today. There's a tool which is a loader called BPF Trace. I will give you examples that allows you to write eBPF probes in, it's called that awk, so it's like C. It's really powerful. So if you want to experiment with eBPF, again, the tool of choice is BPF Trace, really convenient. Because we're doing security, we have tools we love, so you can use Guidra, Opjump, and Redelf in order to decompile eBPF bytecode. So it could look really weird to speak about that, but recently there is some backdoors, worms, malware, whatever, using eBPF to, let's say, put it that way, to be more powerful. So it's really convenient to be able to disassemble BPF bytecode with Guidra, for example. So next, I want to talk about the content of the talk, which is indeed 3 tools. And the first one is dealing with networking. So first goal is to identify a local process network activity. So I want to go a little bit further than just sniffing packet information. I want to go to get the PID and the process names. Why? So because it's cool. It's a good exercise. For example, what I would like to do is log into a server, sniff the network, and later on my laptop be able to remove traffic that I don't want. I'm not interested into SSH traffic. I'm not interested into Firefox, for example. In the case of the secret binary, you can sniff the network and then focus your attention on a specific process, namely the secret binary. Unfortunately for us, on Linux, it's not visible to do that. There is no tools that allows you to capture network packets and associate process information. You can play some tricks. The first one is to launch a binary with a specific username. For example, you can call the user packet capture, and then use an IP tables feature called nflog in order to retrieve this specific user traffic. It's not exactly what we want to do. That could be a trick. Another trick you can do is use network namespaces and launch your process in a specific namespace and then sniff network for this namespace only. Again, not exactly what we want because we are still missing process information. Unfortunately, other operating systems that already. On macOS, you can use the pk-tap option in order to sniff and retrieve process information. So that's how you retrieve information, save it to a pickup ng file, and you can just use the -r parameter to read back the information. And TCPDUM will display that the process that sends this packet is dig, a DNS utility, as well as the PID. So unluckily, unfortunately for us, Apple is using a proprietary extension to pickup ng that is only supported by Wireshark. So in my tool, I decided to go with another pickup option, which is the comment option. On Windows, it's already there. You can use NetSH in order to save in ETL the network packet information as well as the process information. Next, you want to retrieve and compile a tool called ETL2 pickup ng that will convert ETL to pickup next generation. And then you can visualize your process information here using Wireshark or Scapy. So it's really convenient because you can actually pinpoint a specific process network activity. So the first tool has the following blueprint. We want to sniff packets with eBPF. So obviously we can do that with CBPF, but that's not the goal of this talk. We want to get per packet process information, process name and ID. And finally, because I'm a Scapy user, I will use Scapy to actually get TLS messages. To sniff packets with eBPF, what we want to do, you want to build what we call a custom traffic control classifier. TC is a Linux subsystem that allows you to do quality of service. So you can delay packets, you can put them in queue and so on. So this next example will be really simple. We'll build a TC classifier in C. We'll access packet information and we'll set this packet to an eBPF map. And this eBPF map will read by user space. So let's see. You don't need to read everything on the screen. Only the blue part are interesting. So the TC classifier, it's an eBPF program. So on the line 7, 8, and 9, we just map the packet, which is called SKB, to the Ethernet and IP header. On line 15 and 16, we check that we have IPv4 and TCP. That's just the check I want to do in my TC classifier. And finally, I will send this packet to your space. That will give up the first tool. I won't do the demo because this one is not really interesting. So pitch, that's the tool that I will release today. Pitch dump will just sniff packets with eBPF. It could look a bit silly, but eBPF is using the capability capBPF. If you want to sniff on Linux, you need capRow. So depending on your capability, it could be a good opportunity to be able to sniff with eBPF. If you want to get the per packet information, there is a trick. From TC classifier, it's not possible to use the helper that we have seen before, which is BPF get current PID TGID. So we need to be smart. And this is a typical example of eBPF program development. At some point in time, you need to stop, read the Linux kernel source code, and try to figure out what you need to do. In that case, what we want to get is a structure called flow-I that describes packets. So internally, you have the packet source and destination, as well as the ports. The good point for us is that the flow-I structure are manipulated by really stable kernel hooks called LSM for Linux security module, and we'll try to find such hooks. So in order to get this PID information, what do we want? We need to find a hook point, stable one. So here we'll use a security SK classify flow. You will access the PID from this eBPF program and send it to a map. So all this presentation is doing a hook points, reading information, push that into an eBPF map. This is an example with BPF trace. So I told you that it's a tool of choice to experiment with eBPF. The syntax is almost like C. Anyway, what will we do here? First, we take the parameter from the function. We map it to the flow-I for structure, which is for IPv4. Then in the middle, we do some, let's say, shifting and magic in order to convert network byte order to host byte order. And then we display information with a printf. Again, really powerful tool to experiment. And that will be the output. We see that the secret binary first is asking likely a DNS question to the local DNS server on port 53. This server is indeed resolved on my machine. Resolved will do a bunch of DNS queries. And finally, we'll likely around here give back the answer to secret binary. And then secret binary will connect over TCP to the HTTPS server. So really cool again to be able to identify the exchange of information between secret binary and the DNS server and secret binary and the destination. So if you put everything together, if we check well, really hard, what we need to do, we need to compute a packet hash that will be used to access the eBPF map. And then we need to display everything. So it's time for the demo. Okay. Pitch dump. And then here, oops. Then the bsd.org. Okay, yes. Oh, it works. Yes. So here what we have pitch dump that sniff packet information using eBPF that is displaying that curl with this PID is actually talking to netbsd.org. Stop that. Okay. Next is how do we store process information? I've been lazy here. I use the pcap NG, pcap next generation, which is a really good candidate. It's an extensible packet format, and also you have something called the comment option that you can use to store any text, and is supported by Wireshark, TCP-dump, and of course CAPI. So next, another demo with the final one for pitch dump. Okay, pitch dump, right? CSW22. Okay. Sorry. Let's reuse curl. Okay. Control C. We should have a file. Okay. We can use SCAPI. So in SCAPI, we have a function called rdpcap. Oops, sorry, rdpcap that we use to load packets from a pcap. And then what I can do, I could display packet 0, which is TCP packet. And then I can display the comments, which is curl and the PID. So again, it's really simple because SCAPI is in Python. You can easily filter relevant information. For example, we could filter out the secret proxy network packets. That's it for the first tool. Second tool we want to do, we want to identify when a process uses OpenSSL functions, and we'll dig into user probes, uprobes. So why? Again, because it's fun, because we can, and also because OpenSSL, as you might know, it's playing with plain text. So if you hook the OpenSSL function, it's really likely that we'll be able to get the information that is sent by the secret binary, and you will be able to display the plain text, both sent and received over the TLS link. So we are kind of defeating locally, we're defeating TLS. You can set uprobe manually, exactly the same as we did for the kprobe, so it would be fast. So here you just specify the library you want to hook on, and you need to specify the address. Here the address is SSL read. Unfortunately for us, from the command line, you need to know the address of the symbol you want to hook to, but you can do that with objdump, for example. So here we can see that secret binary is actually calling the SSL read function. Again, if you don't have a debugger on your Linux server or whatever, you can use that in order to gather information really efficiently. It's again not related to eBPF. If we switch to eBPF, we can have this one-liner with BPF trace. Again, I'm pushing you to use BPF trace over the weekend. Really simple. So in a single line, we'll do a uprobe on libSSL. In that case, you don't need to specify the address because BPF trace will access the symbol in the library and get the address to perform the hook. And you can just print. You can say, okay, SSL read from secret binary and the PID. Super simple. So the tool number 2 blueprint is the following. We want to hook with a kernel probe to connect and get the destination address and the port on the BPF map. We want to hook into the SSL read and SSL write function, and we want to mix everything. Here again, an example with BPF trace. In that case, and why I'm showing you that, it's called a trace point. Kernel probes can be anything. That could be a kernel function, and that could be an instruction, memory address inside a kernel function. And that can change from one kernel to another. That can change because you recompile your kernel. Trace points are highly stable. If you hook into a trace point in the Linux version on your laptop, it will work in 2 years. So that's why it's much better for syscalls to use trace points. Anyway, what I'm trying to do here, line 6, I'm checking for IPv4, and then I will just display information. The output, which is a bit boring. Here we have a process or something talking to a DNS server, and then discussing with the secret binary destination. So let's have a look at the third demo, pitch. pitch TLS. So direction just give you all messages sent and received using SSL read and SSL write. In that case, we sent one message and we received another one. We'll go back to the output of pitch a bit later. So something we could do, if you have a look at the man page of SSL read and write, is you can check that somewhere there is a parameter, second argument, which is called buffer, and it's likely the plain text information we are looking for. For SSL write, it's really easy. Write is the process writing information, so you can just hook to the SSL write and retrieve the buffer. For SSL read, again, it's more complicated because you will send an empty buffer. You want SSL read to execute. It basically decrypts information received from the network. So the hook you want to do, and you need to do, is a uread probe. So you need to hook after SSL read. That will be the first demo. The argument here on pitch is content. So as you can see in the curl command, I'm using secret random. If you don't know random, that's an internal bash variable that just picks random number. So I don't know the number that will be chosen by bash. Still, the value was 26213. So here we got the information in plain text. So that's SSL write, that's the hook, and this one is SSL read. Okay, that's quite interesting. What we can do next, we can try to go a little bit further. However, there is a big issue. These days, HTTP 1.1 answers are usually compressed, which is really bad because I will need to support compression, decompression in pitch. And the worst case situation is HTTP 2, which is now really common, and that's a binary protocol. So HTTP 2 is supported by SCAPI, but it's a bit boring to be able to add compression, add HTTP 2 to pitch. So we need another solution. So that's the output of HTTP 2. Let's do that with a demo. So as you might have seen in my command line, I'm using explicitly HTTP 1 because by default, curl is using HTTP 2. Okay, so here you just have garbage that's binary, not really useful. So what we want to do, we want to improve pitch and do something else. So we want to dump TLS keys in order to decrypt traffic. And in that way, we'll access internal OpenSSL structures. So we'll basically read OpenSSL memory, and we'll find a way to decrypt traffic with SCAPI and Wireshark. Again, why? Because it's cool. If you are dealing with a software with certificate pinning, in which the certificate is, let's say, authenticity check in your binary, and if you don't want to patch the binary, you can just use these tricks in order to retrieve the secret info, the secret keys from memory. Okay, TLS 101. If you don't know TLS, I will try to explain in one slide. In a nutshell, TLS is an exchange of unauthenticated messages, client hello, server hello, certificate. The certificate message is used to trust the server. Basically, curl will check the certificate authenticity, and if everything is okay, it will say, okay, the TLS connection is authentic, I'm trusting the server. In the end, and that's what we are looking for, TLS will basically compute shared cryptographic lab keys, and we'll have the same key on the host and the same key on the server. Internally, so in the TLS specification, that's called the master secret, and that's what we want to steal. Decrypting TLS traffic, you can do it in two different ways. Back in the days, it was possible to steal or to decrypt traffic with a server SA private key. Nowadays, it's not possible because we are lucky. We have something in place called perfect forward secrecy. So if you steal the private key of the server, it's not possible for you to decrypt the packets in the past. You can only decrypt the packets in the future. So again, what we want to get, that's the master secret. So the second tool blueprint is the following. We'll explore OpenSSL structure. Typical example of eBPF developments, you need to read the source code of OpenSSL and see what you want to get. you need to get a pointer to a master secret. So we'll have a look at a function called SSL get session. And we can also try to enhance the output of pitch by getting the TLS cipher suite, which is a list of cryptographic algorithms that are used to protect the session. There's a trick here for our tool is that the OpenSSL structures are not meant to be accessed by a developer. They are not meant to be accessed externally by a developer. So we'll again need to have a look at the structure and find the good offset to get the values. The first thing we need to do is to get a pointer to the SSL session structure. And the way to do that is to call the SSL get session. Unfortunately, we can't do that from eBPF, but luckily, this function is only 2 instructions long. So I'm not a reverser, I don't do that for a living, but I'm able to tell that the offset that we're looking for, that this one. In pitch, these offsets are hard-coded. You can change them from the command line. Something smarter will be to emulate that with MyISM. I have to say that I didn't have time to do it, but emulating 2 instructions that we can do with MyISM. So ultimately, pitch will be able to get this offset alone. To extract the TLS cipher suite, nothing difficult because that's just a string in a specific OpenSSL function called SSL cipher T. Next part is how we can export and import keys. There is something called the NSS keylog format, which is a simple plaintext format. You have the specification here on this link on the Firefox website. It supports both TLS 1.2 and 1.3. And you can use many tools to read or write these values. For example, you can find in the Firefox and curl documentation environment variable that will make Firefox and curl dump these secrets. And then you can use these secrets along with packets with Wireshark and Scapy in order to decrypt the TLS exchanges. In pitch, if you use the secrets parameter, pitch will display the NSS keylog, the key, the master secret in this format. Client random, that's the keyword specific to TLS 1.2. This value is not useful. Indeed, that's my birthday, July 28. That's the magic I use everywhere when I don't know what to put. And that's the master secret, which is for TLS 1.2, 48 bytes long. Currently, pitch does not support TLS 1.3. That's mainly because I'm lazy. And also because if you have a look at the OpenSSL structure, it's much more easier to do it with 1.3 than 1.2. So I choose the most difficult way, edit 1.2. You want a live demo? Yeah, okay. So let's do that. The goal here just to write the master secret with pitch TLS, use pitch dump to write the pkpng with the packets and the process information, mix everything with the tool from Wireshark, which is called editcap, and then use Scapy to decrypt everything. So demo time. I will need okay, pitch TLS write. So pitch TLS write just take master secret from memory, so all process using OpenSSL, and writes the master secret to a file, and the file name includes the PID. So we'll do TLS write. I will go here and I will use pitch dump write. We'll go back here. Up. Okay, so slightly that will everything we need. So 1, 2, 2, 2. That's a master secret. Then I will close dump. Then you need to use edit cap, inject secrets. So the pkpng format is really cool. You can put secrets inside. So you have a TLS support, WireGuard, and I think Zigbee. And then if you give that to Scapy and Wireshark, they will decode everything for you. So that's the math. Okay. Then we need the CSW master secret. Okay, Scapy. First thing you need to do is to load the TLS layer. We decided not to load it by default because it's a bit slow. Then you need to kindly ask SCAPI to follow the TLS stations with this command. Then you can open the cap. What was the name again? CSWMS, I guess. Tech. Yeah, sometimes it complains about packet integrity, but we should be good to go. Otherwise, that will be a failed demo. And I want to look for maybe packet 23 with application data. Oops. Oh, okay. So it works perfectly, but there's one more step that I won't do today. So as you can see here, we managed to decrypt TLS session, but unfortunately that's HTTP2 because I forgot to switch back to HTTP1. So the demo works, however, we don't get the random number really easily. So that's a win, but I just forgot to change the curl command. When it works, and when you do the TLS decryption over HTTP1, obviously we'll get the get command of HTTP and the secret information. Okay, next, and we'll go for lunch after that. This is a cool part of pitch, which is not released yet, but it's really, really, really exciting. And the goal is to just do nothing. I just want to avoid to launch SCAPI, type commands, decrypt stuff. I want a proxy to intercept when a process is using OpenSSL. I want my tool, my proxy, pitch proxy, to send this process network activity
Recording stopped.
To a proxy, and I want the proxy to decrypt everything on the fly. So why again? Because it's a good way to demonstrate elaborated usage of eBPF. Again, many programs, many maps, many interactions. Ultimately, and that's my goal, I want to simplify the TLS traffic manipulation, and I would like to plug this pitch proxy into burp METM proxy in order for you to easily play with the information in plain text. One more eBPF topic, and before lunch, something called C group SOC ADDR eBPF programs. So to put it simply, that's a perfect tool to alter the socket behavior. So you will change the behavior of connect and bind. For example, for connect, you will be able to change the destination address and the ports, as well as the source IP and port. So basically, say to a process, okay, by the way, this is not the destination you are looking for. Let's go somewhere else. So here is a demo. So that's an eBPF program with for the disconnect syscall. Here on line 2, we check that the destination TCP destination is 53 DNS, and then we'll just force the destination to go to the Cloudflare public DNS server, which is 1.1.1. So we redirect all DNS traffic to Cloudflare. And here is a boring output from dig. So boring, why? Line 0, we just ask dig to connect to 8.8.8 and to retrieve the IPv4 address of perdu.com. It means lost in French, and we like that for demo. And here, line 18, you can see that dig really thinks that it's talking to 8.8.8. So that's why it's a boring output. However, there's a trick, and you need to know how Cloudflare and the Google Public DNS Server works to see that it's actually a good trick. So here on the command line, I use NSID, which is a specific DNS option called name server identification. And what I know for sure is that Google, they do not support that. So here, because we get the NSID on line 10, that's because we are actually getting information from Cloudflare. So it's really cool. The process is not aware of the fact that it's not talking with the right destination. So the blueprint for the last tool will be in two parts. We have a part related to interception. We will identify the process that loads SSL, OpenSSL dynamic library, and we'll retrieve the master secrets from memory. And then the transport proxy will try to connect my secret binary TCP session to the real destination and also decrypt TLS traffic. The machinery is the following. We will hook open, check the file name. So we have libssl.so as a file name. We'll say to connect using a map that we want to hook to redirect, the network traffic to the proxy. In the custom proxy, the connect hook, there is a trick. We'll store the source in the source port. Sorry, we'll store the PID, and that's a trick because that way we'll be able to retrieve the real destination and the real port that will be useful for the proxy. And finally, we'll get the TLS master secrets. In the proxy side, when we receive the connect, we'll use the source port in order to get the real destination and destination IP and address in order to connect the TCP station to the right destination. We'll retrieve the master secret and then decrypt everything. Okay, so that time we really need to praise the demo gods.
Recording in progress.
Exercise. So, okay, first I need to check out pitch proxy. Nope. Sorry. It's branch. Check out proxy pitch. I need to install it. Okay. Do that here. Pip install. Yes. Okay. So here, I can check that. Oops, I have a new command, which is proxy. So here we'll launch this pitch TLS that will get the secrets out of the process memory. Pitch proxy. That's my super cool proxy. Oops. And then HTTP 1.2. So what will happen here? Pitch proxy will use this EP5 program connect. Will send the traffic from the curl binary to pitch proxy. We'll get TLS packets. We'll get the master secret and then decrypt everything. So let's do that. Boom. And we have another random number, which is 27622. Oops. Oops, sorry. Okay. So pit proxy, it got a connection from localhost. The port is 57935, which is a short version of the PID. Thanks to this PID information, pitch proxy managed to get the real destination, which is perdu.com, and the real TCP port. Then it connected and read information from pitch from curl and send it to perdu.com. And finally, after retrieving the master secret, it will decrypt everything. So that's a proxy that is live intercepting OpenSSL only traffic on the fly and decrypting everything. Cool. So next, before lunch, 2 slides. Hopefully, I managed to convince you that eBPF is fun. It's a really cool technology. Over the weekends, if you need to pick a tool, use BPF Trace. So eBPF gives you more power over the Linux kernel and what you could do with user space hooks. The ecosystem is really rich. You have stuff like BCC, which allows you to interact with eBPF with Python, for example, BPF Trace, that allows you to write simple probes with a hook-like language. And yeah, what I want you to do is to think of really cool and new security tools like the proxy that decrypts TLS on the fly in order to build new tools and to have fun. Last slide, open source contribution. I think it's really important. Open source is really important to me as a SCAPI contributor. So thanks to this work, I was able to commit new changes to SCAPI. So SCAPI is now aware of the NSS keylog format. And thanks to that, we're able to decrypt TLS information. We're able to write to pick up NG files and also manipulate the comment option. The second contribution is to BCC, which is an eBPF loader. And that's typical to eBPF. From time to time, when you do eBPF development, it's not working and the tools that you are using do not support the exact program that you need. So in that case, I had to implement the C group SOC ADLR support. And finally, on the Quarks Lab GitHub, so my company GitHub, you could find Pitch. And today I will release, and already released this morning, the dump and the TLS command. And over the next few days, I will finish and clean the proxy codes and release it too. So if you have questions, if you want Scapy stickers, please come to me, please ask me questions. And I hope you enjoyed the talk. Thank you.
All right, I know everybody's ready for lunch. Let's see if there's any questions real quick. None. I want to thank you for your talk. As someone who is just budgeting for TLS inspection for DevOps Lab, you literally just saved me thousands of dollars. So like, if you've ever had to deal with trying to get TLS inspection for your DevOps team and dealing with having to do your certificate authority and get your keys out and re-encrypting the traffic, this just made everything so much easier. So thank you so much. It's an excellent tool.
Welcome. Thank you.
All right, if there's no other questions, let's go get some lunch.
It's time for lunch. Let's see what lunch is going on here. All right. We have lunch. Lots of folks. Oops, we're supposed to do this. Oh, running out of power. What's for lunch? Lunch. See you guys in a bit. We're probably gonna stop the streams now and we'll break for some food. Bye-bye, Internet. Bye. Actually, I lied a little bit. I got to go walk over to turn the streams off.